Here we are. We've done it. I am not going to lie to you guys. I feel like I've been hit by a truck today. Woke up with just a massive, massive headache. Been trying to shake it ever since. I've been napping, trying to find stuff for today's stream. Got my little pug back here. He's been actually a really good boy today. I usually get really worried about days like today because he wants to be up and around and doing stuff, and not so much today. But I think he sees and he put together pretty quickly that I was going to be a pretty snoozy fella today. So today's stream is going to be pretty relaxed, I think. Pretty relaxed. What a time, eh? What a time. Like, really, like, it just seems like I begin wondering, like, are we even going to try to improve it? Are we even going to try to make it better? Happy Friday, Famita. Good to see you. Good evening. Good evening. Got my coffee. Ready to go. Boy, I think yesterday's protest really just knocked me out, honestly. I think I might actually have, like, a flu or something. Like, I might actually be sick. I don't know, though. Tough to say. We'll see how it all shakes out. It's, today I've got a lot of, like, clips and things. Lots of stuff coming out. And I think one of my favorite things I've found so far today, and I'll wait a minute before I actually play it. It is only a matter of time until the narrative surrounding Ukraine, like the actual narrative of what's actually gone on in Ukraine, begins to penetrate. It really is only a matter of time until it's not just Tucker Carlson, right? Until it's not just people on the right end of the spectrum who are talking about it. You're starting to see, we've got on America's Voice AM, for goodness sakes, like literal daytime television, are starting to invite people on their show to actually provide a narrative that runs counter to the official narrative. And the official narrative is as childish as it can get. Like, it's the reason why it's not going to last much longer. Yeah, Don Best Lives Matter. Like, what is the official narrative? The official narrative is that we were doing nothing and just standing around whistling, and Putin went crazy and just pushed into Ukraine because he's a madman. Like, that's the actual official narrative. It can't be believed. Like, it can't be believed. Like, the only type of person who could actually believe this are people who, like, watch Marvel movies, and that's it. Like, are you kidding me? When in the history of mankind has anybody actually just been like, I'm going to invade because I want to invade? Like, there's always some kind of underlying cause. There's always some kind of underlying reasoning, right? Even the most crazed leadership we've ever seen in the history of man, people like fucking Adolf Hitler, right? Like Vlad the Impaler, Genghis Khan. Like, even these guys had some kind of underlying, like, rationale behind what they were doing, right? They weren't just saying, like, I want to invade France because I want to invade France, right? There was, I want to invade the place around me because I want to invade it. There's always some kind of underlying principle or idea. And in this case, as soon as you start digging, right? As soon as you start digging, you find, oh shit, there's actually like a long history here. There's like, it's like the American people have tuned in to like the last iteration or the last chapter of a like 20 chapter book. That's what it is. It really is like they just went to the back of the book and started on chapter 20 and have formed all of their opinions based on chapter 20, right? And have been like, this guy seems bad. And they like don't know anything about him whatsoever. They don't know anything about the situation. And it's steadily going to come to light, right? People are steadily going to stop acting like these, well, I doubt that we'll stop acting like crazed lunatics. We're very much on that path as it is. But it is going to be more and more that you're going to have voices like this penetrate into American media.
Ready yet? Let's keep it going.
I'm
then.
ready. Can you hear me?
There you are.
We got her.
Oh, well, it's so great. We didn't see you pop up right away. Laura, great to have you this morning. I wanted to start with this breaking news overnight that it appears, and there you are. You popped up for us. It's so great to see you. The Daily Mail has a very interesting story that's saying that Vladimir Putin essentially may be running out of bullets, that he might have a week and a half, 2 weeks max. He's losing warplanes, tanks, all the rest of it. He obviously went into this thinking he was going to bulldoze his way through Ukraine. He's obviously caused a lot of destruction. Don't want to minimize the fact there's over 2 million refugees. But this has not gone as well as Vladimir Putin expected.
I don't buy it for a second, Ed, I'll be honest with you. I really think that there's so much misinformation. We've never really seen anything like it. I mean, I've been covering wars now for 35 years, and I have never seen people with their nails done in the Ukrainian flag, right? I mean, we're being corralled into this box where we either have to hate Vladimir Putin and believe everything evil that's said about him and love Ukraine, and there's no in between. And that reminds me a lot of you're either, a white supremacist or you go with the Democrat narrative on everything under the sun. So Vladimir Putin knew exactly what he was doing when he went into Ukraine. The Russian military isn't perfect. They, for example, I've spoken to multiple defense specialists and intelligence specialists from a Defense Intelligence Agency who've studied the Russian military for years. They do have a difficulty mounting complex air operations because they do very little training hours in comparison to, for example, the United States air assets, right, our fighter jet pilots. But Russia is not struggling. What Russia has done from the very beginning has been very strategic. They didn't go straight to Kiev. They went to all those bioweapons laboratories that are scattered all over the country. Some of them they built, so they know where they are. They've known where they are since the Soviet Union, because under the Defense Threat Reduction Program, we went in after the fall of the Soviet Union and supposedly turned those facilities from bioweapons labs into public health labs. Although, these days it's hard to believe anything that our leaders tell us because they've lied about COVID, they lied about Russia collusion, they lied about the Ukraine impeachment trial, and there's so much more going on in Ukraine that nobody is talking about. You see such dishonesty when it comes to the history of Ukraine. You see dishonesty when it comes to the Azov Battalion, which is funded by the U.S. and NATO. I mean, you can find pictures of them online holding up the NATO flag and the swastika at the same time. Their own emblem contains the black sun of the occult, which was a Nazi SS emblem. And it also contains the sideways, lightning insignia of the SS. I mean, this is on throughout the Ukrainian military. You can see that black sun of the occult on their body armor, even on the female soldiers who are paraded in front of the world as being, such an example of Ukraine's independence and spirit and nobility. Even they are wearing the black sun of the occult. And, the White House wants you to believe, well, this doesn't matter. It's just a small number of troops. It's not true. The Azov Battalion has been murdering its way through eastern Ukraine.
Yeah.
We don't want to admit this. This was why Crimea voted for independence. This is why Crimea wanted to be with Russia. Because we in the media, in the Western media and in the West, won't acknowledge the reality of what's gone on.
Look at her. This is my favorite part of this clip. Look at this woman right here. She's aghast. Like, she's aghast at what she's hearing, right? And later on, you're going to hear her say something that really, shows you how entrenched the American propaganda is. And when it comes out of her mouth, you can see how she realizes how childish it is as they're saying it. Well, they're trying to, grinning, but I think that this guy actually, is no, we need to be talking about this. I think he's trying to interject. When he interjects, it's with a question. These people want her to talk. This is the thing that I think is happening in America, and especially low-level media, right? Low-level media, I think, really is beginning to realize, your high-level corporate people are just going to go along with the death cult until the end of time, right? And if they stand up and if they speak, they'll just get chased out, right? Low-level media is really starting to understand, if we do not actually talk about this, there is a path that we can go down, right? And it's a path that I see us going down. I think we're already heading down that path pretty sharply. And I think that there are lots of people in America who are beginning to say, like, do we actually want to be the Nazis? Because that's what we're talking about now. Like, that's what we're talking about. Do we want to be the Nazis? I think we're already the Nazis. I think we're already there. Like, I mean, I think the Iraqis and the Syrians and the Somalians and the Afghanis, like, they think we're the fucking Nazis. Like, just because we're not flying a swastika. Like, they look at the swastika and they look at the American flag and they say that's the same flag, as far as they're concerned. So, but American citizens are beginning to really wonder, like, is this what we're becoming? And you're going to see it as this goes on.
Ukraine backed the Nazis. It was a headquarters for the Nazi SS. The CIA under Allen Dulles actually gave immunity from prosecution to the Nazis of Ukraine from the Nuremberg trials. So there's a long history of the United States and our intelligence agencies funding and arming Nazis in Ukraine. These are not like new neo-Nazi groups that sprung up. These are the actual Nazis from the Second World War, who, if you go back to the Nuremberg trials, said that they were planning for a 1,000-year Reich. And so you have to really wonder, as you look at this, when you know that the CIA sponsored the Color Revolution in Ukraine in 2013 and 14, that they selected Ukraine's leaders, go to Victoria Nuland's leaked phone conversation where she and the U.S. ambassador are deciding who can lead Ukraine. I mean, there's as much interference here as you could possibly imagine before you even get to Hunter Biden, Nancy Pelosi, John Kerry, and Mitt Romney, and all of their children who are employed, who earn millions from Ukrainian gas companies.
Yeah, you were pointing, pardon me, to a real credibility crisis for our leaders. I want to let Karen Turk jump in.
Yeah, I wanted to bring up the fact that President Zelensky is Jewish, and I don't know exactly how this factors in, but there's some very interesting points in what you're saying. And looking at this, you know, you could think it's political theatrics. You made a very good point at the beginning that you think that Putin is in control. And I actually want to play something that Jen Psaki said, because it seems that the White House is actually echoing that sentiment. Watch this.
Well, the end game is really a question for President Putin. We have completely crushed his economy. We have provided military assistance, humanitarian assistance to the Ukrainians, enabling them to fight back for far longer than the Russian leadership anticipated. And again, he has to determine what the path forward looks like for him. Thanks, everyone.
He's determining what this looks like, and I think that's a lot of what you said, Laura. I'd love to get your thoughts on that, what you just watched.
What troubles me about the moment that we're in is that we have such a selective and a narrow reading of history. You know, President Zelensky may be Jewish, but he's not the only one in this who suffered during the Second World War, whose ancestors suffered, right? I mean, look at Putin. How many relatives did he lose in the siege of St. Petersburg? People don't know their history. They don't know what made Vladimir Putin. And I'm not I'm not defending him. I don't need to defend Vladimir Putin. My job as a journalist is to try to understand what is the truth here. I don't like being lied to. And we're being lied to on an epic scale. When we're told your only choice is you have to be 100% with Zelensky, who's a puppet, who you can find on the internet in black stilettos and leather pants, you know, with shirtless, doing a spoof Dancing with the Stars kind of entertainment video. That's a mock of a Ukrainian group that does this kind of satanic, occult type of music video. And I mean, Zelensky was selected, like so many of our leaders. And honestly, with big tech and with election fraud these days, we don't know how many leaders all around the world have been selected for us and weren't actually voted in. But what we do know is that there are increasing problems with technology and the digitization of our world. Because look at what's happening with COVID. Look at what has happened globally. We are fighting the same battles all over the world. To pretend that this war is about Russia and Ukraine is just a barefaced lie. If Putin has been warning for 15 years that he is not going to stand by while the globalists take over the world, build bioweapons facilities and whatever else they're doing in Ukraine, Ukrainian oligarchs. Ukraine has been a center of money laundering for, many of the leaders in this country. For how long? Billions of US dollars have been laundered through Ukraine, and we say nothing about it. These are our tax dollars. I mean, before the impeachment trial, had you ever heard of anyone in the United States I mean, us bringing in foreign governments to the White House for anti-corruption training. I mean, does nobody question these things? Why do we not question them? We have an idiot like Lieutenant Colonel Vindman who goes at the impeachment trial and sits there as a lieutenant colonel. He didn't even make colonel. And he's telling the President of the United States what his policy should be. You have a traitor in the form of Maria Yovanovitch, who was Obama's ambassador, who's telling Ukrainian government officials, don't listen to the will of the American people. Don't listen to the election results. We are the true leaders of America. I mean, and then people object when the woman isn't even fired. She's given a cushy job for life at Georgetown University at the expense of the U.S. taxpayer. And we're told that the President of the United States cannot say to his foreign counterparts, you know, that we want you to look into something. But Joe Biden can withhold as much aid as he wants to. I mean, there's so much hypocrisy and dishonesty here, and Ukraine is at the center of it all. Go back to Russia collusion. Go to Alexander Chalupa. Go to Eric Karamella, the whistleblower who went to work for Adam Schiff, who wasn't really a whistleblower, and all those corrupt people in the deep state. And you know what? The deep state isn't a theory. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's an actual deep state.
Yeah, I mean, it's beginning to occur. And what's an interesting thing that's starting to happen, if you ask me, like, you listen to this woman, right?
Okay.
And you just listen to her voice, right? You just listen to the type of what she's bringing. Like, this is an attractive woman with a wonderful voice. This isn't like Alex Jones. This isn't like a balding, pudgy white dude being like, no, the deep state's coming and Zelensky's just a pawn in this game. These voices are beginning to arise. Low-level media is beginning to recognize that we need to actually listen to these low-level voices, right? That look, there is a path that we can go here, right? And if you ask me, like, internationally, we're already well recognized as being the Nazis on the world stage. We're already well recognized, right? All of these countries, all of these places that we've absolutely destroyed, like, why the hell do you think Putin started to be like, hey, keep NATO away? Like, you tell me, why did he start doing that? Could it have been the abject destruction of the Middle East and Libya? Some of the speeches that Putin gave as America was destroying Libya were impactful, were impressive. Like, the Russians were aghast at that. Like, they didn't buy into this oopsie-doo narrative that comes into the American press, this Marvel brain rot bullshit that we have over here. They look at Yugoslavia as another good one, but like, they look at Libya as an atrocity. They call it that. They say outright, like, this is a fucking atrocity what you guys have done. Like the destruction of Libya is overwhelming evil. Like, evil isn't even a good word for it anymore. It's just callous, manipulative destruction. And you hear, like, literally people like Hillary Clinton, when they destroyed Libya and killed Gaddafi by having someone ram a sword up his rectum, she said, gleefully cackling while she said it, we came, we saw, he died. Ha 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 ha. Like, she told some kind of really great joke, right? Like, these people are psychopaths. And the rest of the world is really, like, they know. Like, they really fucking know. And like, when the Canadian Parliament starts chanting Nazi slogans, right? Like, if you're a Russian or a person from China, right? If you're Chinese or if you're Russian or if you're Indian, if you're from South America, if you're from Africa, you're looking at all of these parliamentarians in unison with no dissenters, standing up, chanting a Nazi slogan. Like, yeah, it's time to start calling a spade here. It's time to start calling a shovel and a pot. Right? Like, we are looking at a culture that has gone full-blown Nazi and doesn't even seem to mind. doesn't really seem to care anymore. Like right now we are at the precipice. Like the Nazi apologetics that I am seeing in the society, right? We are one step away. Like literally one step away from people just saying, we're Nazis, fine. What are you going to do about it? That's where we're at. Like that's the level of Nazi apologetics that I am seeing in the society today. That there's a type of like denial, a type of downplaying. It's not even denial, right? There's literally people saying like, yeah, so there's Nazis that we're funding, but there's Nazis everywhere. Like that's what I'm being told, right? Like that's essentially a capitulation. That's just saying outright like, well, there's Nazis everywhere, so we might as well have Nazis, right? And like, don't be fooled by the first half. She goes completely off the rails in the second half. Just because she's right about Ukraine doesn't excuse her not to views about Koba, global, satanic cabals. She's a Trumpist MAGA type. Okay. Like, but this is where we're at. Like, this is where we're at. And it flows into a larger point, Transylvanian, which is just because someone's wrong about something doesn't mean that they should be silenced. Right? Like, that's the whole thing with when it comes to this concept of free speech. Right? And it's interesting that we are absolutely silencing people. Like, so what if she's wrong? Like, so what if she's got kooky views about other things? So what? Does that mean we don't listen to her? Does that mean it's over? Right? We just shut it down? Oh, no, can't listen to her. She has kooky views about this other thing off in the corner. Right? Better silence her. Better remove her. Right? And, like, of course it's the conspiracy types that are willing to realize what's going on faster, right? They've already given up on the power structure. They've already seen through it, right? They just don't know where to root their feet. And, like, we really are. Like, we've got our parliamentarians are chanting Nazi slogans. Our Congress people and our senators are chanting Nazi slogans. You think the rest of the world looks at that and goes, oh yeah, but they got weird views about COVID? Like, that's a threat. Like, that's an enormous, massive, huge, large scale, like, number one threat. Because these cuckoo views on some of the other things could cause immense damage. Look, I genuinely don't want to get into a conversation about COVID because I found that COVID, like, it's too difficult a conversation. The larger question about COVID is to ask of the society is, why was it so difficult to get everybody on the same page, right? That's the much more interesting question to me. I'm genuinely not. I care so very little about, like, well, you said this and this person said this and they've got this kooky view over here and this is harmful and this does this and this does this. But I've seen Fauci lie. I've seen that, right? Like and that's undeniable. Right, I've seen our highest level medical professionals lying to us, right? And really the larger question that I want to spend my time in on the COVID question is, how was it and why was it that it was so difficult to get everybody on side with basic measures and basic things, right? And it's not good enough to be like, oh, they're kooks. Like, no, not good enough. Not good enough at all. Right? Like, we are looking at a society that is eating itself alive, that is dismantling itself from the inside out. And they can't even get on side on things like put a piece of cloth over your face. Like, that's high level distrust. That's high level distrust. Like, we are not a society. We're not a culture or a community, right? Yeah. Because the entire system prioritizes the profits of corporations over the lives of people. Hence why we never did proper lockdowns, contact tracing like China did. Yeah. And what's scary about what we're experiencing in this moment is that because there are people who we may disagree with and who we see as kooky, they're the ones that are coming up and actually telling the truth about what's happening in Ukraine. Well, they're just getting dismissed, right? Like, this Like, we really are going to, like, start introducing Nazism into our culture in serious ways while saying that it's freedom. Like, we're already there, and we're not really doing anything about it. Like, and the amount of censorship that's coming through on this issue is incredible. Oh yeah, I had it. This one. Average Redditor now gets upvotes for openly labeling Russians as subhuman orcs and calling for all Russian children and civilians to be genocided and tortured for fun. I've seen this. Yeah. It's scary how mentally unhinged normies are. Far scarier and inhuman than anyone on poll. This is 4chan, by the way. While they are supposed to be the tolerant ones. One flip of a switch from government is enough to turn them into killing, lynching machines, and worst of all, they would still feel absolute moral superiority. Like, this is what I see now. Like, this is what I view the average person in society as now. Like, and I'm not going to be talked down from that. Like, this is where we're at. And, like, people see this kind of stuff. This is an interesting map that I wanted to show because it gives a different perspective of how people view the world, right? Like, this is Russia's perspective of what's happening to it. Like, each one of these little dots is a military base, right? Like, if you're Russia, you're just like, yeah, this is cool. Cool and normal, right? Cool. Completely fine. Like, this is terrifying. Like, this is absolutely terrifying from the Russian perspective. And the idea that, if America were to begin and NATO were to begin a full-scale war with Russia, it would be doing bombing campaigns through this region, right? Airships would be coming from here. The encroachment in from Ukraine opens up a land corridor to the capital, for God's sakes. You ever feel like you're watching a slow-moving train wreck? Yeah, that's exactly what I feel like, Yetis. That's exactly what I feel like. Like, I feel like... And what's so dumb is I feel like I'm watching a slow-motion train wreck that could stop at any time. That literally you could just pull a lever and the whole thing would end, right? Like, that's what's the most embarrassing about it from our perspective. And we're just, like, marching towards it. We're completely unheeded, completely uncaring. Like, believing we're the good guys, while we are the ones directly responsible for causing the train wreck in the first place. It's brutal. Islam, I'm not ignoring you. I just don't know what does this mean? Is this French? Let's take a look. A discussion technique that intends to discredit the opponent's argument by attacking the opponent's own personal behaviors and actions. Yeah. Like, instead of actually talking about what we're talking about, right? And, like, all we need to do is go outside and just not participate within the society. I mean, easier said than done. They've got the food and shelter, right? That's the thing. That they're withholding food and shelter from us. And they say, work for us, and that means that you have to pay taxes, and that means that you are the ones who are funding this death machine that we're propping throughout the entire planet. That's the scam, right? They've got your food and shelter in their, they've grabbed you by the balls, and they've told you, yeah, there is no way not to participate. That's just it. Like, there is no way not to participate. Which is why we have to, and I've been saying it all along, we have to surround the halls of power, right? We have to gather en masse, and we have to redraw our constitution to prevent these psychopaths from existing in the first place. Because, like, this is psychotic, what we're saying. Like, we are in not only a mass hysteria, but it's a mass hysteria that's being driven forward by some of the most psychotic people who have ever walked this plane of existence, right? Like, this is a psychosis. No, I understand that, Islam. It wasn't directed at you. People discrediting those who speak up against Ukraine with shady pasts. Yeah, like you. But if that's your game, you can always do that, right? There's no such thing as a pure, innocent, clean moral actor, right? Nobody, Milo, you've got so much peanut butter here, dude. What's the story? You can always do this, right? You can always do this. And honestly, I think that's part of the reason why people really liked Donald Trump, right? People really liked Donald Trump. Like, everybody assumed that it was over when he, like, made fun of somebody with a disability, or he said the grab her by the pussy kind of stuff, and so on and so forth. But it's exactly because of this reason. Because people who were voting for him were like, yeah, okay, like, so he's just like a dumb guy like me, right? Like, I'm over this presentational bullshit, right? I want to put somebody in there who will do and say stupid stuff like I do all the time, right? Like, I'm done being moralized by people who literally are funding Nazis. Like, it's getting to this point now that the very people who make the claim that we are morally, objectively better, right? Half the country is a bag of deplorables. Well, what are they doing? They're actively funding Nazis. Like, you don't get worse than that. Like, the only way you get worse than that is if you are the Nazi, right? So they're funding the Nazis, and then they're turning around and telling us that we're the bad guys. Get the fuck right out of here. Like, it's unbelievable. This is my point. I resent that meme claiming that people on poll are less bad than these genocidal, bloodthirsty libs. They just have a different target group, naming women, black and brown people. To be fair, I don't know that much about these guys. Like, honestly, I just thought it was a funny meme that popped up. Like, but it's getting to this point where, like, even the reprehensible people are starting to say, you guys call me reprehensible? You guys are funding Nazis. Right? Like, literal, like, serial killers and rapists and shit are able to stand up and be like, you guys are funding Nazis. What the fuck? Like you tell me I'm the bad guy. And maybe you are the bad guy. Maybe you genuinely are, like, beating women and, like, doing all kinds of horrible stuff. You know what they're not doing? Funding Nazis. Like, this is how degenerate the entire society has become. That the very people who stand on a throne and say, diversity, and we need to celebrate and inclusion and spread goodness and improve the society. Well, what are they doing? They're funding literal Nazis. Like, this is where we're at. Where the moralizers, the people who claim to be the higher people, right? The lesser of the two evils, if you look at it like that, well, guess what they're doing? Right? Like, can we get more degenerate? How? How could we get more degenerate than this? Right? And we will. We obviously will, because we're not doing anything to stop any of this. We're not even trying. Like, we're not even trying. Like, our leaders are like the fucking Kim Kardashians in the society are just saying, like, you better work, batch. Yeah, I bet you. It's basically turned into, like, Indonesian sweatshop workers and being like, work harder. Do not participate puts your life in jeopardy within the society, plus so much division, the people are going to come together. Yeah. The more time passes, the more hectic things become, the more likely division will increase, and we'll kill each other first before we come together. Yeah. Do not forget the megatypes are incredibly racist. Just because some of them are seeing through the mainstream propaganda on Ukraine does not make them allies. They are horrible people. I mean, but this gets into a difficult conversation, and it's one that I've seen over and over again. Like, we have to place class interests above these questions of race. We do. Like, we actually do. That dividing people along racial lines and dividing people along those lines is a victory for the death cult. It's something that they do and they use as a tool to divide the populace, right? They want us to be divided along those lines, because if we can be divided along those lines, then we'll never find the division along class lines, which is the true division in the society, right? And which is why they maintain it, right? Which is why they focus on it, which is why that's all they talk about. And as long as you keep voting for them along those lines, they'll happily do it, right? Both are awful. There's a reason why Stalin said social democracy is objectively the moderate wing of fascism. We are witnessing how this scratch liberal behaves, fascists on both sides. Yeah. And that's what's really scary. Like, we literally can't vote our way out of this, right? Like, everybody stood up and chanted a Nazi slogan. Like, everybody. Like, no exceptions. Like, and the people who didn't, like, objectively, like outright just, like, clap along while it happened got, like, called out. Right? They got like hyper focused on it. They got called. Oh, they're terrible people for not chanting Nazi slogans. We've not forgotten who they are. They're just blatant with their racism and misogyny. Libs on the other side, on the other hand, love to beat around the bush. Look, and I mean, I'm not convinced that the Democrats are less racist than the MAGA guys. Right? Like the MAGA guys are overt, sure, but like these liberals. Like, I think that they just view the black population and the Hispanic population as tools, right? They still view them as subhuman. They're just subhumans that are necessary to their political gain. Like, that's it. I don't see these Democrats as being, like, less racist. Certainly not people like, what, Justin Trudeau, Chrystia Freeland? Like, the people actively funding Nazis? If you ask me, the liberals are fucking worse. Because the liberals are the ones standing up being like, we need to protect the black people and Hispanic people, but we're going to fund the very people whose entire ethos is about destroying those subhumans. Like, that's far worse in my view. That's a much deeper form of racism. And a much more aware form of racism, right? Like, a lot of the MAGA guys I mean, I'm from Manitoba. I've met these types of people. Right? They've got like a clueless form of racism. They're just like absolutely like out of touch. Yeah, poor self-awareness. Like they're dumb, right? Whereas the racism that comes out of liberals, right? That's a very well and specific and articulated form of racism, right? A type of like head tilting, like, oh, we feel bad for them kind of racism that that uses them as a tool cynically in order to gain power and then fund neo-Nazi groups to actually go after them and kill them, right? And like the MAGA crowd is taking this one personally. I can see it. They spent the last 6 years being called Nazis, right? Like in mainstream media press, they were called Nazis. And now here's the Democrats literally funding Nazis. Like, it's hard to not take it personally, I would think. So, wouldn't now be the best time to take time? We might have less than a 20-year timeline before we destroy the planet. Yeah, I mean, like, everybody should quit. Like, everybody should quit and stop doing what they're doing. And, like, literally stop everything. Like, we are going to destroy this place. Like, it's absolutely going to happen. And it's completely our fault. Like, completely. And when I say our fault, I definitely mean, like, Westerners. Like, North American Westerners. For sure. Like these fucking neo-Nazis. They are interconnected. Race and gender oppression reinforce and are not reinforced and are reinforced by class oppression. The way to get allies in the class struggle is to address the immediate concerns. Yeah. But the unfortunate truth is that if you spend your time, like, the hard truth is that when you need to get workers on your side, it means that you're going to get racists on your side too. Like, that's just real. Like, that it is. Like, it's what I've said this all along, that all the way down the pipe, right? You want to form ranks along with the working class, you're going to end up with racists. You are. Like, that's just how it is. And if you spend all your time trying to divide along racist, non-racist, and trying to determine who is a racist and who isn't a racist, well, the death cult wins. Like, that's what it is. And I'm not saying I'm happy about it. Like, I'm not saying I'm like, yeehaw, let's go racism. Like, but I am saying, like, it's a battle that we lose. Ultimately, even if we win, we lose. We are truly in a Mission Impossible movie script, but in real life. Yeah. They absolutely do that deep down, but most of them have managed to convince themselves that they care about minorities. They are self-gaslighting, yeah. Yeah, easy to say, people need money to live. No, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Only collective action can break this. That's what it is, right? That's why it's important for us to go out into protest, right? The COVID hesitancy has got to end. That's a big one, if you ask me. The number one reason why people are not coming out and protesting is COVID hesitancy. Like, that's really what it's coming down to, and it's got to end. Like, it's got to be over. Like, if you're not willing to risk getting sick from COVID while the threat of being evicted into the streets is looming over your head, then maybe it is just cowardice, right? Maybe it really is just cowardice at this point. Like, we have to actually form ranks. We have to actually come out and do stuff. And the way protest always works, and it always works this way, is that you get nothing, nobody shows, right? You get like a little spike up, and then a little down, and then a little spike up, and then all of a sudden there's 100,000 people in the streets, right? This concept of alienating people who have the most to gain from joining the class struggle, the most oppressed and the marginalized, the most dependable allies when you let racists and misogynists in, you literally can't stop the racists and misogynists from coming in. Like, if there's 100,000 people in the streets, like, literally, like, really think about it on basic organizational, like, if you have 100,000 people in the streets, you simply can't prevent it, right? And if you spend all of your energy focusing on attempting to root out this group, right, who has come in to join the larger protest, then that's all you're going to do. Right? That's all you're going to do. But you're not appealing to reactionaries. Like, you're pretending like the organizers of these protest movements actually have control of what's going on. It's about focusing your energy. That's what it's about. It's about focusing your energy where you can focus your energy. Right? And you have a limited amount of it. And if you focus your energy on attempting to divide your own movement and divide your own thing and parcelize your own thing, you lose. And that's just the harsh reality, right? Like it or leave it. That's the bottom line, right? Like, do you want to fight on class lines or do you want to fight on race lines? You got to pick one, because you only have so much energy. You really only have so much energy. You only have so much time. You only have so much effort. You only have so much you can do, right? And if what you're going to focus on 100% of the time, every single time, is the race issue, you lose. And that's just real. And this is one of these things. Like, you are ostensibly correct, right? Like, in an on paper, like, moral discussion, even like a logical kind of thing, you're correct. But is to have an explicitly anti-racist, anti-sexist, anti-bigotry line to the level of the collective organization. Some individuals who join may hold these views, and this should be corrected. I mean, okay, then that's what you're going to spend your time on, and then you lose. Like, you can't actually win this way. Like, you can't. Like, I really do hate to break it to you, and I'm not happy to talk about it, to have to talk about this way, but it's the truth. That when you get 100,000 people in the streets, like, what are you gonna do? You gonna hand around a cue card? You gonna have a checklist? You gonna like vet people, right? Like, the best that you can do is ensure that the inner circle doesn't get infected with this shit. That's the best that you can do, right? That whatever inner circle structure that exists within your within your system, that you can control and that you can vet, right? But if you spend all your time attempting to purify your entire movement, that's all you'll do, and that's all you'll achieve. Like, straight up. Like, and I hate to be the bearer of bad news on that one, but that's the truth. And it's all well and good to like, and again, like, I'll say it, you are correct. Right? Great. You still lose. No, you only have so much energy. Like, you only have so much energy. Like, look how much energy I'm wasting on this. Look how much energy I'm spending on this right now. You only have so much. Right? It's not a false dichotomy. You can either spend all your time purifying your ranks along the lines that you say, which if I was a CIA asset, that's all I would do, right? I would constantly be infecting the movement with this kind of stuff because that's all they're focusing on, so that's all they'll achieve, right? So we win, obvious, slam dunk, right? It's what the liberals did. Like, it's what the liberals do, right? You can watch them do it, right? Or you can turn and you can say, okay, right? You can bite the bullet and be like, okay, like I would rather focus on class issues and talk about class issue and say what's going on in terms of the class dynamic. And it's nice to say we can do it all, but we can't. Like literally. Like that, and it's not a false dichotomy to say that that's the truth. We only have so much energy. Look what we're doing now. Right? We're doing this instead of talking about anything else. Right? And that's life. That's how it is. And I can literally concede that all of your points are absolutely correct. And that it would be great if we could constantly be focusing on purifying our ranks and constantly be getting everybody in line and constantly be doing all that kind of stuff. But we can't. Like, we can't. It's just a very practical position. Like, it's a very practical thing. The best that we can do is make sure that the inner circle is in line and the inner circle is on point. That's the best that we could do. No, it's not easy for me to say. It is not easy for me to say. It is absolutely not easy for me to say this. It really isn't. Like, I am not happy about it. But that's called living life. That's called living in society. Like, if we don't focus on class dynamics, if we don't focus on the class structure, who owns everything, who doesn't, who is working on behalf, who is owned and who is the owner. If that's not central, if that's not what we're focused on, first and foremost, then we can be dismantled. And we could be dismantled on the exact lines that we're talking about. And we'll have like very robust discussions and very lengthy conversations and very articulated, all of that kind of stuff, while the owners walk away with the society. And this is my point. Like, we have to be talking about class first and foremost. Like, it has to be that way. And we're simply not. And we're simply not. Like, we need to be having these class conversations. Like, and what liberals do, and they do it. It's active, right? It's an active policy decision that they do in front of your face, and you can watch them do it. Is that they take issues of race and they and diversity and gender, right? And they use these as a shield. And they use these as a way to co-opt the conversation and talk about these are the issues that really matter, and these are the issues we have to be focusing on, and these are these kinds of things. And so they open up the space for gay people and trans people and black people and Hispanic people and all minority groups, right, to show up at 9 a.m. and do the work. Because that's what it's about, right? They're absolutely happy to have a manager who is, a black gay woman. Yeah, just as long as you show up to work on time, right? And as long as you show up to work on time, you can be whatever you want to be, right? Be a free, open, rainbow color, Black Lives Matter flag. Show up to work on time. Do our work for us. That's what it's about. And as long as we're hyper focusing on issues of race to the exclusion of people who are attempting to join the class conversation, we lose. Like, I'm not interested in losing. I'm really not interested in losing. Like, I'm interested in winning. I'm interested in surrounding the halls of power with huge groups of people and redrawing the Constitution in front of these guys' faces. I'm not interested in bogging us down in a conversation that's already happening and already bogging us down. Like, if you want to have that conversation, join the liberals. They'll happily have this conversation with you over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. If you want to have a conversation about race and that's what you want to talk about, Well, there's the Liberal Party. They're well established. It's all they do. Like, we're here to talk about class. And I hate to break it to you, there are racists who are workers. Like, that's real. And ostensibly, the purpose of this movement is, and again, hate to break it to you, is to actually improve the quality of life for the racists too. Because I place their humanity, their base humanity, above everything else. Above literally everything else. Do I disagree with them? Do I think they're wrong? Do I think that many of them are abhorrent? Yeah. That's the nature of the movement. I would like the quality of life to improve for even my enemies. And if all we're going to do is draw battle lines and exclude people from the movement, that's all we're going to do. On a very, very practical basis. It's all we're going to achieve. But that doesn't mean you get to ignore everything else that reinforces and props up the class oppression. I mean, you got to pick your battle. You do. And you will. Right? And you will. And you have to make the choice. Right? Go ahead and go win that battle. Right? Lose the war, win the battle. Like, that's what we're talking about here fundamentally. And, like, the liberals have been winning battles for those people all along. Just as long as they show up to work on time. Just as long as they accept the lower wages, just as long as they accept the worsening conditions, just as long as they accept that their society is in free fall collapse, you can be a black gay woman as long as you accept that your wages are getting chewed away, all that kind of stuff. You can be whoever you'd like to be, right? Fly the rainbow flag, wave the Black Lives Matter banner, all of those kinds of things, as long as you accept that your society is going to collapse and the billionaires are going to run away with the money. So if that's the conversation you want to have, there's plenty of places to have that conversation. But if you want to have a genuine class conversation about how to actually fight back along class lines, well, the unfortunate reality is that you're going to end up with racists in the mix. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. Like it's completely like you're telling me you want to get the unions involved, so you want to get like the steelworkers union involved, right? Like you want to go find the steelworkers union, get them involved in a big strike, right? Surround the halls of power, right? Get so you're telling me there's no racists in the steelworkers union? Get the fuck out of here. So what? We got to purge the ranks of the steelworkers union first? That's all we'll ever do. Like, there's just a strong practical reality to this. And of course I'm not happy about it. Of course I would like to live in a world where a person's skin color or sexual orientation simply didn't matter. That would be my preference. I come from a society that is deeply racist, just like deeply entrenched racism, right? And I can tell you, it's a shittier society. It's just a shittier society. Like, a society full of many different viewpoints and many different cultural backgrounds and many different types of diverse individuals and all of this. It's just way more interesting. I find the whole conversation about trans people to be so fucked up and weird. Because it's like, what are you talking about? Like, is the complaint literally that society was... or that sexuality is more complex than we initially thought? Is that the complaint? Like, the complaint is that it's more of an array than it is firm points, right? Like, seems more interesting this way, doesn't it? Like, is it more complex and confusing? Sure, but I feel like that gives us an opportunity to really explore this place a lot more. This is why I show people the Franz Fanon on violence video on YouTube. You got to decolonize the mind, which requires the elimination of a system that allows for oppression on the basis of identity. I mean, if you have 10 people and $10 and they all need to eat a slice of bread or they'll die, and each slice costs a dollar, one person gets 9 and the other 9 get $1, how do you resolve this situation? I mean... and I'm supposed to hold hands with someone who... No, I'm not telling you to hold hands with them. Like, no. Absolutely not. Of course not. But if that guy went and beat up a billionaire, you wouldn't be mad about it, would you? Right? Like, as Ken says, right? Enemy of my enemy is my friend, right? And again, like, you don't allow this kind of stuff to infect the inner circle, obviously, right? That's why the Stalinists, are not the Stalinists. That's why the Bolsheviks had purges, right? That's why there's purges that happen in these sorts of structures, right? You go through and you actually do take the time to actually purge people like this out of your inner circle. But if you tried to do it in the general populace, if you try to do it in the mass, right? It's all you'll ever do. And that's all the liberals ever do, right? Look where it's got us. And like no one's telling you to view these people as your buddies or your friends, right? But that's not the arrangement that we're getting into here. Like, we're getting into an arrangement, and we're getting into a place where we're going to have to be soldiers. We're going to have to actually be soldiers. We have to be militant. We have to stand in front of trucks. We have to stand in front of military equipment. We have to stand in front of police. We have to stand in front of these people, right? As they actively attempt to destroy us. These moments are coming, without a doubt. And the reality is that when the police are coming at us with smoke bombs and batons, right, they're going to beat you up whether you're black, brown, or white, and whether you're a racist or not. Like, when it comes down to it, if there's some hillbilly hick standing over there, bat in hand, ready to face down the cannons, ready to face down the police, and when it comes down to it, when you guys are getting beat up and when you guys are getting thrown around and when you guys are pushing back, you're not going to care if he's a racist or not. And if all we do is spend our time trying to get rid of these guys instead of putting them on the front line with us, then that's all we'll ever achieve. And there'll never be a front rank. There'll never be a front line. It'll never happen. And you want to see the proof of that? Just look at the Liberal Party. Like, it's a tough pill to swallow. It is. It's a tough pill to swallow. But it's the truth. And that's my whole fucking thing, is the truth. W.E.B. Du Bois writes on how slavery propelled capitalism. His work on slavery is great for understanding the interconnection between class and race. It's clear that capitalism needed more than just class to oppress people, hence the creation of slavery. And I mean, there is also, like, it's interesting to see, not that long, I have a video here on the Irish potato famine, right? Like, a different type of white person was seen as subhuman at one point, like the Irish. The Irish were seen as subhuman and so, like, this identity idea and the shifting of race and all this kind of stuff, it can shift and it can change, right? Because it's all being done on behalf of a wealthy class. That's all. Like, it's convenience for them, right? Like, tearing groups apart, tearing the working class apart, and pitting them against one another is a tried and true tactic of this class. It was easier to justify slavery of BIPOC when you dehumanize them. Well, yeah, and like, same story with the Irish potato famine. I'll be playing this later. Like, as long as you view a group of people as subhuman, right? Like, it doesn't matter what color their skin is, as long as you look at them and say, like, oh, they are geographically in this area, they speak this language, therefore they are less than I am. We've just, like, in this society, we very much, like, carved it up along skin color, right? But white people don't exist. There's, like, white people don't exist, right? Like, you have, like, the Polish and the Irish and the Italians and the British and the Germans and the French, right? And they're all just, like, here in North America, and they look at each other and go, well, we all have white skin, and they have black skin, so we'll say that we're white and they're black, and that means that we're better. Which is, like, baby-brained, but that's how it is. the Texali. How's that for a name? Good to see you, man. Don't know if I've ever seen you around. The trouble is that there's a lot of attention seekers. All you need is fairness and real equality, not sympathy. I mean, but this is what this conversation is about, is how do we achieve that? What's the path? What's the path to victory? What's the winning path? Right? Because that's what it's about. Right? Like, because you can be correct and still lose. Like you can fight for something that is righteous in its own way and still lose, right? Like, we want to win. Like, that's what this is about. It's about winning, and we're not going to win if we act like liberals. If he has the power to finally beat up a billionaire, he has the power to do some serious harm to POC communities, I'd be out of the country by then. I mean, not if he's forming ranks with you, right? Race has historically been used to break down class unity between white and black workers. Giving preferential treatment and social privileges to one group over the other turns them into class traitors. Yeah. If you want to be able to wage class struggle effectively, you need to address these issues that are being used by capital to divide and rule. This is why I reject the dichotomy of either class or race struggle on one front makes progress on the other front easier. By ignoring race and gender oppression, you hamstring. Look, no one's ignoring it. Like, that's annoying. Like, no one's ignoring it. Like, but you and I see it. You can see it every day. You can see it, that we sacrifice class to race and gender. I've literally been in conversations where I've been talking, this conversation itself, like, we're instead of actually talking about class issues and class dynamics, the whole thing comes to a halt. We talk about race and gender and identity, and then it comes into a moral purity place, and then there's a schism, and the whole thing falls apart. I've witnessed it. And when it happens, the CIA asset in the group goes, great, mission accomplished. No one's ignoring it. But we're saying, or what I'm saying, is that class has to take precedent. It has to. Because if it doesn't, then the whole thing falls apart and you just become liberals. Like, that's the dynamic that's at play. And I take it to the end point of it, the unfortunate reality of this, whether you like it or not, right? If you want to win, if you want to be successful, if you actually want like 100,000 people to surround the halls of power and actually get something done along this line, well, guess what? There's going to be racists. Like, just by the course of everything moving forward, by the force of humanity, by just like statistics, it's going to be the truth. And you can choose to spend your time going through the ranks and trying to vet people, right? Or you can continue pushing against where the actual power is. And the reality is, if the racists are going to join up with us to push against the power, well, are we going to spend time picking them out? Like, it's not fun what we're talking about, but it's real. I win all the time getting lower paid worker greater pay increases by refusing to accept percentage pay increases. You have to give the rich something, but ensure the lower paid catches up. I mean, this is like piecemeal reformism, right? Like, we keep begging for scraps. I got a 10% raise. That's great. Like, the hard reality is we're doing all the work and they're doing nothing, right? They're standing in Parliament doing like Nazi salutes and shit, or Nazi chanting Nazi slogans. If I want to be fair, like, the conversation of race dynamics that exists in this society, and yeah, colonization for sure. And we don't really view ourselves as colonizers in this society. Like, the goal of all of this is to do better than like simply getting pay increases, right? The workers should own the means of production. The capitalist class should cease to exist. That's the point. That's the goal of all of this. Is that because if all you're doing is just accepting small increases in your wages or any of this stuff, well, the capitalists will undercut that. And we're seeing that in the society. We're seeing how the capitalists are undercutting us. We're seeing how they're destroying us. Like the rate of inflation. Like if you didn't get a 6% wage increase last month, your wages went down. Right? That's across the board. And so we're finding ourselves to need to be in a position of constant negotiation with these guys. And my ultimate statement is it's time to stop negotiating with these guys. Right? It's time to form an organization, and it's time to form a group that is no longer willing to negotiate. That the time for negotiation is over. Because we're seeing over and over again, these people are not negotiating in good faith. That any concessions they give us, they will claw back. Right? And that capital will eventually destroy itself. And take us with it. And so we can spend all our time negotiating, like the Fight for 15 movement I've always thought this about these guys. Like, you're begging for scraps that you're going to get pulled back on in big ways, right? You're just begging for scraps. And if all you do is beg for scraps, then that's all you're going to get. And those scraps that they give you, by the time you get them, well, inflation has chewed it away, or they've pulled up something, or they've raised the rent, or they've done something like this. All right, it's why I'm not really a big proponent of the basic income anymore, because the capitalists will destroy it. They'll destroy any gain you've had, and eventually the whole thing comes apart because eventually the wage no longer pays the rent, which is what we're seeing today. Right? You can have you have a minimum wage job, you're not paying rent. Right? That's not happening. So the goal of this is to eliminate the capitalist class completely, to transfer the means of production into the hands of the working class and be done with it. And or at bare minimum, guarantee food and shelter to the public. Like, the greatest form of leverage that the capitalists have within this negotiative structure is that they withhold food and shelter from us. Like, we don't have food and shelter guaranteed to us. You can't just walk into a place and say, I need a place to live, and they'll give you a place to live. That doesn't happen, right? You have to sell yourself to a market dominated by billionaires. You have to, right? And whether or not you get paid like $30,000 a year or $40,000 a year or $50,000 a year doesn't matter to them. Doesn't matter fucking at all. You're still selling yourself to a labor market dominated by billionaires. And as the billionaire class gets less and gets tighter and tighter, and as their demands for labor go down, because that's what happens, because they're no longer interested in serving the public, they're interested in serving themselves, well, more and more people become homeless. That's why you have 60% of Canadians. What is the point of seizing ownership? You would know what to do with it. You have to work to get everybody the same, so everybody is working for each other and the betterment of humanity, not greed. I'm not sure I understand the statement. I mean, yeah, that's the point. Like, people should work for each other, and people should work for the betterment of humanity, and people should work if the manufacturing centers throughout the 80s, when they got dismantled because of NAFTA and shipped over to China, right? Would that have happened if those manufacturing centers were owned by the workers? Probably not. It's very doubtful that the workers would ship away their own jobs and render themselves unemployed, right? Like, we are looking at a situation here where we don't have a manufacturing base anymore. Like, we don't make anything, right? We use our dollar hegemony in order to buy goods from other people, but that's ending. And so we're going to be left with nothing. We're not going to have a manufacturing base. We're not going to have a working class, really. Like, the whole thing is just a complete and total fucking disaster. You guys really love the number draw, eh? I always forget about it. Here we go.
Here we go for today's number.
I'm sticking with the
It's
10.
March 18, 2022.
We got a
10
2.
balls.
We got a 3 from Oddity.
Each ball has a number. Numbers 1 through 10. Swirl the numbers. Pick a number.
That's a good array of numbers.
Today's number
It's gonna be
is
like a
9.
You guys see that? You guys see what just happened? I took a look at the array of numbers that we had picked, and I thought to myself, nah. Today's a grumpy day. I feel it. I feel it in my brain, and I feel it from the chat. I feel it. Let's all pause for a moment. We just had some pretty tough conversations here. I
Good
think.
morning.
Divisive conversations too. Like these are the types of conversations where people drop out, and I know that's the truth. And I think it's important for us to take a moment, especially now as we've all just experienced a loss together. I think it's important for us to all remember that we're having these conversations together in good faith with one another. And I'm feeling mad and angry and grumpy and depleted myself. I'm feeling emotionally down. Not depressed. I know what that's like. I know what that feels like. But I'm definitely feeling, I'm upset. I'm upset. And I'm sad. And I think it's important to bring that around to that kind of human element and bring it around that even as we have these difficult conversations with one another and even as we have these tough situations and tough conversations, that I think it's important for me to say that I'm coming from a place of love, and that I'm trying to fight the good fight for all of us. I'm trying to win for all of us. I'm trying to build something for all of us so that we can all improve this thing and succeed in ways that we haven't yet experienced. And I know that I can be alienating. I know that because oftentimes the truth is very alienating. And I know that sometimes I can really believe in myself maybe a little bit more than I should. And so I try to, but I'm always trying to tell the truth. And I'm always trying to be part of a larger and wider conversation. And I'm always trying to elevate us, not just so that we get a little bit more pay, but just so that we can be human together, so that we can be better than this and better than we are. Wave. There would be no more problems and suffering if we all died right now. Here we go. Let's go. Let's turn this into a suicide cult. Let's go. That's what we should do, right? On the third equinox of the 5th year, we will drink the poison and return to Vishnu. Or, I shouldn't say Vishnu, because I don't know if Vishnu would be down. How good are the trade unions in Canada? I mean, they exist. They exist. All right, Famita, for you. As requested. I mean, I've got Comrade Brittany up here, so... Oh, baby, baby, how was I supposed to know? Something wasn't right here. Oh, pretty baby, I shouldn't have Now you're out of sight, and show me how you want it to be. Tell me, babe, I need to know now what we got. My loneliness is killing me. I must confess I still believe. When I'm not with you, I lose my mind. Give me a sign. Hit me, baby, one more time. Oh, pretty baby, the reason I breathe is you. Girl, you got me flying. Oh, pretty baby, there's nothing that I wouldn't do. It's not the way I planned it. Show me how you want it to be. Tell me, babe, I need to know now what we got. My loneliness is killing me. I must confess I still believe. When I'm not with you, I lose my mind. Give me a sign. Hit me, baby, one more time. My loneliness is killing me. I must confess I still believe. When I'm not with you, I lose my mind. Give me a sign. Hit me, baby, 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 one more time. Comrade Brittany. Comrade Brittany. Loaf coming in just in time. How you been, Loaf? I was talking about you just yesterday, bud. We were talking about the bread cult yesterday. I think you're in a minor key when you should be in a major, just saying. Nah, fuck that. Fuck that. Hit me, baby, one more time, man. Comrade Brittany. Laying it out. Yeah, no one expects that I'm going to pull out the guitar, right? All the new ones, they're all of a sudden like, what the fuck? He's got a guitar? What the fuck? He's singing Britney Spears? What the fuck is this? It happens every time. I love it too. It's my favorite. Thanks, Islam. Thanks, Pissed Off Bud. I know you guys love it. Podatist gang, rise up. Oh, you want Psychopath Nation? You got it, bud. Yeah, you got banned from Reddit? Like Reddit? Did you get banned from all of Reddit? Or just World News? Oh, thanks. Thanks, Famita. I appreciate that. I really do. Oh, man. You guys are putting me through my paces today. You know, it's a good day. It's a good day to sing some music. There's something cathartic about it for sure. There we go. Your entire account. Your entire account. Holy shit. Wow. That's brutal. I've been banned from a lot of subreddits. From our Canada, from our Ontario, from On Guard for Thee, a lot of different subreddits around. More than that, even I got banned from our communism. I got banned from our March Against Nazis. The anti-fascists of Reddit I got banned from for literally just posting like a link, right? Like literally just links and shit, and I get banned. And so, I cannot play Seven Nation Army. No, I don't have that one ready to go. I could probably do it, but until then, all right. Try to remember how to actually play this song. burn yourself out for dollar bills, kill your children for a few cheap thrills. You got a problem, well that's too bad. You're too tired to see you've been had, yeah. Work or starve while we drop bombs. No such thing as right or wrong. We'll call you lazy while you work to death. You gotta earn yourself a moment of rest. And I won't work for a psychopath nation. No, I won't work for a psychopath nation. Burn those corpses so you can speed. Buy that garbage you don't need. We'll play the victim while you lose your grip. Why won't they work in the apocalypse? Yeah, retreat into your stupid lies. You act confused while your children die. You promise change but act the same. Gaslight, deflect, and take no blame. And I won't work for a psychopath nation. No, I won't work for a psychopath nation. As we collapse into the devil's lap, as we watch the world burn to ash, you'll whine like bitches on your way to the grave. Why won't those serfs just behave? Yeah, you're fucking vampires, demons, and ghouls. We're done with being played for fools. The curse is lifted and we're free from your spell. Keep on crying while you burn in hell, 'cause we won't work for a psychopath nation. Yeah, we won't work for a psychopath nation. Yeah, we won't work for a psychopath nation. Give me a C on that one. Can I play anything by Nirvana? I can play one song by Nirvana. Let me play the one song that I can play. It's been a long time since I played this one. I played this song a lot when I went through a breakup. My girl, don't lie to me. Tell me, where did you sleep last night? In the pine where the sun don't ever shine. I would shiver the whole night through. My girl, where will you go? I'm going where the cold wind blows. In the pine where the sun don't ever shine. I would shiver the whole night through. My girl, her husband was a working man, just about a mile from here. They found his head by the driving wheel, but his body was never found. My girl, don't lie to me. Tell me, where did you sleep last night? In the pine, where the sun don't ever shine. I would shiver the whole night through. My girl, where will you go? I'm going where the cold wind blows. In the pine, where the sun don't ever shine. I would shiver the whole night through. Her husband was a working man, just about a mile from here. They found his head by the driving wheel, but his body was never found. My girl, don't lie to me. Tell me, where did you sleep last night? That's the Nirvana tune, I know. Can't believe he banned from Reddit, man. That's so... like, from all of Reddit. I had Arbor 300. Yeah, it's fine. Probably end up making another one soon. Honestly, go to, like, Lemmigrad. Go to, like, Hexbear. Right? Get off Reddit. Like, if that's what I've been thinking. Like, Reddit is steadily just gonna become, like, a cesspool. It's just gonna become like these fucking nightmare guys. Like that's what Reddit's turning into, right? Like Lemmigrad is a place that's safe for leftists. Hexbear, when Chapo got banned, like when they banned Chapo Trap House and the Donald, those organizations popped up. Yeah, someone tried to ban me from an anti-capitalist group on Facebook today for pointing out that Zelensky is allied with Nazis. Right? Like, it's all they've got, man. Like, it's all they've got. All they got right now is just like, don't listen. Bam. Don't listen. Just cut it out. Right? Misinformation. Disinformation. Russian propaganda. Right? And you like literally can show them a documentary from Oliver Stone. Like, that... I think one of the scariest things that's happened is you can go to Amazon.com. Like I do this all the time on my stream, and there's a couple of new people in here, so let me do it. Right? You can go to Amazon.com or Amazon.ca because I'm in Canada. Right? You can type in Azov for the Azov Battalion. Oh, did they pull it down finally? Did they finally pull it down? Holy shit. Guys, I think they actually finally pulled it down. Glory be and mercy me. Fucking finally. Only took them... Oh, good. Fuck yeah. They probably just sold them all is what happened. So you used to be able to buy Azov merchandise off of Amazon. Right? So just literal like neo-Nazi... let's see, Ukraine... Let's see if I can find any. Maybe it'll pop up when I type in Ukraine. Yeah, there you go. There you go. They finally pulled it off. So there was a period of time when you could find literal Azov Battalion merchandise on Amazon. And they had banned Oliver Stone's documentary off of Amazon. So, like, literally, wow, look at this fucking crazy. Puck Futin, I like it. It's a lot of merchandise, man. It's a lot of good stuff, honestly. Like, you can't hate it. You can't hate it, right? I am not Ukrainian, but I support you. Yeah. It's hard, honestly, like, it is hard for me I do think that there is a good amount of this outpouring that is happening because it's coming from a place of just like, it's coming from a place of like, we don't know what's happening, but boy, do we want to help, right? I think there's a lot of that that's actually going. Do they have welding masks? Always with you, grinning. Probably, dude. Probably, dude. You saw the lady in the lingerie and immediately thought welding mask. I know what it is, grinning. Don't fuck with me, bud. Yeah, the internet is in major hysteria for sure. And I'm keeping a low profile, at least for the next month. Insanity is ensuing right now, for sure. For sure. Yeah. Speaking of actual disinformation, have you seen Pepe Escobar's tweet about the alleged summit in Kiev between Zelensky and Polish Czech politicians that turned out to be staged in Poland? No, I don't really pay much attention to Pepe Escobar, honestly, in the first place. Like, I don't know what Zelensky and... No, I mean, I do know what they would be talking about, but, like, I wouldn't be surprised to find out that Zelensky's talking to those types of politicians, and, like, it's not really going to matter. Like, what's going to happen in Ukraine is that once the Nazis are routed out, and I've actually got some really interesting maps on this regard. This is a Russian map. Not very well detailed, if you ask me. Like, there's Crimea, there's the Donbass, and then here's where the fighting forces are. And then you've got we've been using this one from Radovka, right? You can see this, and this is a Russian source for sure. They're pushing in. This blue blob is like the major source of the military. This is where most of the military is. I think the two major points of, the three major points of conflict are obviously Kiev, this blob here, which is the Nazis who have been shelling Donetsk and Luhansk this whole time for the last 8 years. And then Mariupol. You have something like 3,000 Azov battalion. Like, the military that's posted here are a mixed bag. As I've been learning more, it's not strictly the Azov boys. There's like actual like other Ukrainian military forces there. But the forces that are in Mariupol are Azov battalion. So these guys are the entrenched position. And then, of course, the politically necessary victory is going to be Kiev. That the Russians, they need to destroy the Nazis here because the Nazis aren't going to stop fighting. This is where the bulk of the military actually exists, right? I thought they were straight out going to carpet bomb the shit out of this, but they are going in with artillery and small ordnance to steadily claim territory, and you can see that's what they're doing. And then Kiev is the politically important. They need to seize Kiev just for the political victory. And of course, to affirm, because I don't like using just Russian sources, this is from the French Defense Ministry, showing pretty much the same thing. A little bit less incursion. Like these guys are telling us they're much further along, I think, than these guys are willing to say. And of course, they're showing like there's a gap here where there's like closed here. But besides these minor points, everyone's in general agreement about how this is gone, right? Like this is where the Russians are. This is where the Russians are. And this narrative that's saying like the Ukrainians are slowing down the advance and they're going to be able to, like, that's all fucking nonsense, right? That's all fucking nonsense. And I think he has an excellent analysis on Eurasian geopolitics. All right, bud. I'll take a look. I will. Because the always looking for good sources, always looking for good people. The mainstream media is scary with all the Ukraine virtue signaling from Trudeau and Ford. I'm worried that they might do within the next year with regards to free speech. Yeah, I mean, well, for God's sakes, like what more could they do? Like they literally have already banned RT from CTRA or CTRC. I'm fucking it up. We've already banned like Russian television. We're already banning leftists from being able to speak and have a platform in serious ways. We already declared emergency measures, like completely needlessly. I'm actually starting to see lots of grumblings that there are lawsuits coming against the government because of their declaration of the emergency, and it doesn't look like it's going to go in the government's way. Because like everybody, like I didn't find a single source when they declared the Emergency Act. Did anybody stand up and say it was appropriate? Like that's the thing that was really interesting about that moment here in Canada when Trudeau declared the Emergency Act. I don't think anybody was in favor of it. Like I couldn't find like a single source that was like, this is appropriate. Like we should definitely do this. This is necessary, right? Even like the classic liberal vanguard newspapers, right? You're like Globe and Mail, right? Even the CBC, right? Like who was actually going like, yeah, good, the Emergency Act got used. It was necessary. We absolutely had to do this. So I feel like I do think that the liberals have sort of reached the. I shouldn't say this, but I feel this way, that they've reached an apex. Like they can't go much further than this in terms of stripping away people's rights and stripping away and freedom of expression and all that kind of stuff. Like the populace is willing to accept the removal of RT television, although I am yet to see anybody be like, rah, yeah, get rid of it. Like everybody's been a bit like, I mean, we get it, but we're a bit, is this a road that we really want to go on? Like it's, the response is sort of more tolerance than anything. And I mean, that's usually how like these far right fascists work, right? Like take the populace as far as they're willing to go and then stop there, wait a little bit and then take them a little further, right? Like that's usually how it works. And, but we'll see, right? Federal Defense Minister Christine Lambrecht sees little further opportunity to hand over Bundeswehr weapons to Ukraine. Yeah, the options via the Bundeswehr have been exhausted. Yeah, like they can't get weapons to the people who need them. Like how? Like the supply chains have been cut off. The Russians have everything surrounded. Like they can't get the weapons where they need to go. They can send them if they like, but there's no. I've been saying it all along, right? The problem that the Ukrainians have at this point is that they need men. Like they need men, and they're not getting that, and it's not going to happen. And the Russians have everything surrounded. The Russian strategy at this point is to just wait for the Ukrainian military to deplete its arms, right? Like it doesn't matter how many. It doesn't matter what you got going on. Like if you're out of bullets, you're out of bullets. And like that's the situation in Mariupol, right? Eventually these guys just run out of bullets. And I'm more or less of the opinion. And again, I don't have like a source document for this claim, okay? So this is just my kind of view of what I've been gathering from people. It's like if it wasn't for the fact that the Nazis wouldn't give up, I really do think the Ukrainians would have already surrendered. Like, writing's on the wall. Like, the Russians are everywhere. They're not going to push back the Russians. Like, that's not going to happen. The Americans and NATO aren't coming in full force. They're not implementing a no-fly zone. They're not doing any of that kind of stuff, right? So, like, war's over, right? The foreign fighters, i.e. the mercenaries that come in, have been blown up or have fled because they realize, oh, these aren't women and children who are helpless, like we've been killing in the Middle East this whole time. This is like a fucking real military that has real ordnance and can really fuck us up and have several times. So like, and you got lots of stories where like these mercenaries are showing up and they're not being given weapons and like, it's all just like chaos and disorder because I think that the people who are in the know right? The people who are in power and the people who know what's going on are aware that, like, yeah, we're going to declare surrender, right? We are. It's coming. We can't right now. Why? Because the Nazis aren't listening to us. The Nazis aren't going to put their weapons down, right? The Nazis are going to fight to the death. And so if you declare surrender now and then your military keeps fighting, it really tips the hand and shows everybody that we weren't really in control in the first place, right? Like, the Nazis don't listen to Zelensky. Like, they don't listen to NATO. They don't listen to any of these guys. They're doing what they want to do because they're fucking Nazis, right? And they know what the end of this is for them. Like, they know how it goes. Like, they either die on the battlefield, in glory to Ukraine after all, or they get captured and put on trial and then they get killed. Like, that's the narrative for these guys. And they know it. Like, they know it. If you're a Nazi in Mariupol, like, there's no... Maybe you have some kind of crazed, like, exit strategy where you can find your way out, right? But that's what you're doing. You're trying to find your way out. And most of them know it's not going to happen that way. So I think that once the Nazis are defeated from Donetsk and once the Nazis are defeated in Mariupol, the surrender will happen immediately. Because... what's left? Like, what's left? Cops are coming for me, guys. Cops are coming for me, guys. If JT called another election anytime soon, it'd be a political death. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Especially given what happened in the last election. Like, absolutely brutal what happened to him. Oh, I skipped over some stuff. Or I got some stuff skipped over. Dude, yeah, poor Lee Camp. Honestly, all those guys. Chris Hedges loses yet another platform, right? Richard Wolff, right, loses a platform. I don't think Abby Martin was there anymore, but, like, Abby Martin used to be on RT television. So, hopefully, like, I actually genuinely do think that Lee Camp is going to be okay, right? Like, he's going to basically do what I'm doing. He's going to turn into, like, a YouTube guy, right? And it's... is it going to be like the same kind of spread and the same kind of affluence and the same kind of thing? No. And maybe finally, like, I've been saying this about Lee Camp for a long time. Like, he keeps trying to be a comedian. And I'm like, yeah, Lee, you're not actually funny. Like, that's the thing with Lee Camp, right? He tried to create, like, another Daily Show. And the problem is that he's not actually that funny. And the writers aren't that funny. And so I really hope that he just turns into a political commentator, right? And that he kind of gives up on this comedy thing that he's doing, right? Because, like, he's absolutely invaluable on the left. And he's from day one, he's been calling this right. Like, the Ukrainian crisis, he's been calling it right. All the way down to the Donbass war, right? All the way down to the Donbass war. So, like, I my heart goes to him, man. I hope that he keeps on plugging on. When do you think the conflict will win? Another week? I honestly thought it would last 2 to 4 days max. I would have never thought 3 weeks-ish. The thing that slowed it all down, Vince, like, if the Russians wanted it to be like a week-long endeavor, it would have been, right? But they're willing, and they have stated, and the military is on side, and everybody agrees on the Russian side that taking our time is the way to do this. They don't want to destroy the place. Like, that's really what it comes down to, right? Like people are asking, like, well, how come the Russians aren't taking all this territory, right? If the goal is to seize Ukraine and to seize the whole thing, well, how come they're not really seizing all this territory, right? And it's because this is all farmland, right? They don't want to destroy farmland, right? And they don't want to disrupt the farmers as they go and farm, right? They don't want to cause a famine. Like, that's crucial from a very basic human position, right? It's crucial. And the Russians, and I've been saying this since day one, right? The Russians are being as delicate as a military force can be, right? That if it was up to them, they would, like, reach a hand down from the sky and pluck out the Nazis and throw them in a bin, right? Like, they'd do it that way, right? As gently as they possibly could. Because they don't want to just, like, level the place. If they wanted the war to be over quickly, they could. Like, they could. But they like Ukraine used to be part of Russia, and many Russians view Ukraine as one would view like a brother or a cousin, right? Like they don't think that Ukraine is like a subhuman barbarian place. Like it's not the same way that like the Americans view Iraq, right? Like they view the Ukrainians as equals, and they view this situation as deeply unfortunate, and put a lot of blame on the West, as they should, right? That this, and so how much longer is it going to take? It's going to take as long as it's going to take. It's going to take as long as it's going to take. As long as the Nazis can hold out. That's how long it's going to take. Yeah, there are a couple of other Azov strongholds for sure. Odessa and Kharkov in the south and the east. Yeah, but you are right. Like Mariupol is the biggest one, and yeah, that's where their leaders are. And I mean, the Azov battalion has already lost leaders. Like the founder of the Azov battalion has already been killed, for example. And so we'll see how long this takes. It really does just come down to how long until these guys run out of bullets, right? Because the Nazis don't have supply chains. That's the problem. Like, we can send them as many weapons as we want, right? How do you get them in? You can't. Like, the supply chains have been broken. You gonna send weapons through Russian lines? Like, no, it's not. It doesn't work that way. And the Russians have air superiority, right? If you were to create a convoy, for example, right? If you were to send a convoy through to try and get arms somewhere, well, the Russians are going to blow it up, and be pretty unapologetic about doing so. So it's a grind now. This is the grind, and once the Ukrainian military runs out of arms, once they run out of bullets, and there's no sign that they're going to be able to form up ranks enough to push the Russians back. Like, that's really it. Like, every so often you see on television, like Scott Ritter was talking about this. You see on television, like, Ukrainians get, some tactical victories here and there, where they like outflank the Russians at one time, or they like, there's a convoy of Russian tanks or something coming through, APCs, and it gets sideswiped with a rocket or something like this. And so there are tactical victories that the Ukrainians have achieved. And they are still like a very competent fighting force. Like, the Ukrainians are not pushover idiots. Like, they know how to fight. But the reality is that they're disconnected from one another. They don't have communications with one another, right? The first thing the Russians did was they blew up the communication centers. So nobody can talk to one another. So they can't coordinate with one another. And so what you end up with is just like every single one of these places, like Kiev, Kharkov, Mariupol, Odessa, the war front here on Donetsk, well, they're all independent fighting forces, and they can't help one another. They can't coordinate, and they can't get resupplied. So every time they shoot their bullets and have to put in a clip, well, that's it. Like, it's over, right? So eventually you run out of bullets, right? Eventually you run out, and that's the question: when is that going to happen? And from the Russian perspective, their perspective is like, as long as it takes, as long as it takes. I hope it ends soon so the sanctions can be lifted, the propaganda begin to ease. At least one can hope. Yeah, I mean, one can hope that eventually that'll happen. I'm more or less convinced that no matter what happens, the Americans are going to declare it as a victory. That Russia is going to get what it wants. Like, it's the Donbass region, Donetsk and Luhansk, are going to their independence will be affirmed, which I think is a huge win for Russia, right? Like, that's a huge stretch of territory on their border that is now has like an independent actor on it, so it can turn into another Belarus, right? Like, that's a big win for them. And Crimea is going to be acknowledged as a Russian state, and Ukraine will agree not to join NATO. those three demands have been consistent throughout this whole period of time, right? The Russians, Putin has been very, very clear that that's his war objective. And because Westerners don't fight wars for war objectives, right? We don't actually believe or understand or talk about war objectives, right? We just go into areas, destroy them, stay there forever, and then when we leave, we're like, bye, and we steal all their stuff on the way out, right? And we don't actually state a goal or have objectives. And so people don't really understand that, like, Russia has objectives here, and they're going to achieve those objectives. And when they achieve those objectives and begin withdrawing troops, America will say, haha, we repelled them. We defeated them. We were able to grind them out. And look, and now look at them, they're fleeing, right? So we won. That's what's going to happen in America. And we're going to be sitting here being like, but the Russians got everything they wanted, right? They literally got everything they wanted. But because they didn't become a permanent occupying force, and because they're not always there in Ukraine forever, and because Ukraine isn't part of Russia now, which the Russians aren't interested in, they don't want to go through the hardship of making Ukraine part of Russia. Like that's a huge endeavor. That's a huge endeavor, especially when there isn't especially when the Ukrainian people don't want it, right? They don't want that. So this idea, so get ready for that. Get ready for all the propaganda coming out saying that we did it, Slava Ukraine, we won, right? When it's going to be a full scale surrender, the Russians will get everything they wanted. Yeah, it is the copium of the masses, exactly, dude. Sorry for joining the stream late, Box. I'm glad that you apologized. I was feeling very, very. I was like, Box is not here on time. How dare he? It doesn't matter, dude. Thanks for being here, bud. I appreciate it. Just hear about your bit about the energy you have to focus on things. That's so fundamentally correct from a physics perspective. I'm glad you got there. I mean, yeah, we're fighting to win, man. Like, we're fighting to win. You know, that's what, and we gotta keep up the fight. We gotta keep pushing. We gotta. And the issue that the left is having here in Canada and the United States is that we're very disorganized. And we're all over the place, and nobody knows who's doing what when, right? And so there's this, like, spreading out of energy, right? Everybody's having their own little protest on their own little day, like, doing their own little thing. And what we really need to be doing is forming a spear and, like, and creating, like, a spear tip and a one full thrust going in. So it's the disorganization that's really hurting us, if you ask me. Which, I mean, it makes sense that we would be disorganized given the amount of energy that puts into disorganizing us. Like, literally, like the Communist Party of Canada, for example. Like, I recently they had a documentary of the history of the Communist Party of Canada. They released it. And apparently throughout the late 90s and early 2000s, these guys literally had, like, agents infect them and steal their money and break the party in half, right? A full-scale schism. So it's like we have enemies, and the same people who are funding Nazis are the same people who are trying to destroy any leftist or communist movements that exist in North America. And so if we don't, but we just got to keep plugging at it and accepting that we only have so much energy. We really need electoral reform in this country. I don't think electoral reform to me is a bit of a dead end. If you ask me, like. My brother has been involved in politics his whole life, and he always thought that this electoral reform thing was a waste of energy and time. And it was what matters more is engagement, that getting people politically engaged. But the problem is that as the system stands, and it's not the electoral part of the system that matters, it's the outcome. Like we don't have food and shelter guaranteed to us by a constitution, right? Like that we don't actually have, and the truth is that, like, the electoral system, the democratic system has been taken over by capital, right? So we could reform it all we wanted, and it's going to be the oligarchs that have the final say anyway, right? Because they're the ones with all the capital. They're the owners, right? And so we really do need to redraw our constitution and start treating the electoral system and the electoral body. Like, I mean, try to involve ourselves as much as we can, sure. Like, that's a front that we can get onto. But we have to really start treating it as if it has betrayed us, if it no longer works on our behalf, right? That's part of the whole theory of revolution, that the governing system no longer operates on behalf of the people. And we've gotten there, right? Like when the Russians fomented their revolution against the Tsars, they weren't talking about like putting in like an electoral system or electoral reform or any of that kind of stuff, right? They knew that the Tsars had stopped working on the behalf of the people. And so that creates the revolutionary basis, right? Or the basis for your revolution. Only the Russians know what the actual timetable for the operation is, but they say everything is proceeding on time, the mission's being accomplished as planned. Yeah. I've only seen approval of Russian censorship because Russian propaganda, yeah. My position on the Russian censorship is if you can't hear what your enemies have to say, then you're probably the bad guy, right? Like, if you can't actually listen to what your enemies are telling you and speak back to it, right? If you're just not willing to listen, you're probably the bad guy. You want to come up, buddy? You want to come up? Ooh. Okay, but you do want to come up. You just want to bite me. Is that what it is? Okay, up you come. Important information brought to you by the pug. That's right, Milo. You tell the people. Speak from your heart. Right? Speak from your heart. No, Trudeau's not going to call another election. That would be suicide, right? Like, what happened last election was an embarrassment for him, right? Like, and really of note, like, no one moved. Like, that's really notable. Like, Canadian elections don't go that way. Canadians take the opportunity to shift their positions. And Canadians are fickle. Like, we do shift and change almost every time. It's this last election was extraordinarily rare. It's extremely rare to come out of an election and basically the power dynamic is as it is, right? Like, especially when you're in a minority position. I actually can't remember the last time we went from a minority government to the same minority government, right? Like, that's extremely telling. Like, there's something much deeper going on there. And if Trudeau was to call yet another early election, I think it would go against him in a big way. But Canadians do not like this early election shit. You want to lose an election, you call an early election. It's a bit of a gambit, and sometimes it can work. Like, sometimes it has worked in the past for Liberals, not this time. No Fed election this year. We have provincial, municipal already. Yeah, it would be suicide for Libs to call a third election. And honestly, why? Like, he doesn't really have to. The NDP are basically on side with him. They're basically going along with everything he says. So why bother? Another take I've seen on this is a comparison to how Russians operate in Syria. They open humanitarian corridors and let extremist jihadists be funneled through them out of the cities. I mean, they've been trying to do a lot of that corridor stuff, but the Nazis aren't really going along with it. I don't think so. They must have made a promise to the Conservatives not to call an election until after September, when they decide their new leader is. Yeah, there's that too. Like, I just, it's way too early for an election. I think Canadians would be very, very, like, grumble bum about it. I don't think they'd be very happy. They quarantine the extremist militants all in Idlib and Syria and will likely do the same in Ukraine, using Lviv on the westernmost part, which they will separate from the rest of Ukraine. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I know, you're talking about Lee Camp, yeah. I read somewhere that the reason Ukraine even managed those few tactical wins against small isolated targets was because the Russians went in with not a lot of troops. Yeah, that was one thing. I've seen that they basically came in all along the border, right? And they pushed in all at once instead of doing very strong tactical thrusts, right? And of course, this critique is a bit odd because the amount of ground that the Russians covered in the period of time was faster than the German blitzkrieg. So like they moved quickly. They were moving quickly. And I really do think that it has more to do with flushing out the Nazis than it does with, flushing out the military than it does with trying to destroy and seize territory quickly, right? Like, Russian victory is pretty likely. Like, and it really just does come down to supplies at the end of the day. I'm scrolling through Toronto Star. Toronto Star receives 8 National Newspaper Award nominations. Wow. It's like the rich class just rewarding themselves for their own propaganda. Yeah. It's like the Oscars, famous people giving themselves award. At least cinema can inspire. What does CBC, CTV, Toronto Star do other than state propaganda? Yeah, no shit. A lot of people are saying they don't think Russia will give up any of the occupied territories anytime soon. They're already setting up their own administrations there. They may want to overhaul Ukraine's political system to cleanse it of Nazis thoroughly. Yeah, that's just a big we'll see. Like, I think it's fairly unlikely that Russia wants to set up it like that's a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a lot of money. And I don't know that the Russian people themselves are very much in favor of that. On the other hand, you are right. Like the Russians, like they do want to denazify this place. Like, so they get Donbass, they get Crimea, and they get an agreement that's NATO, and then what? Then they just install another neo-Nazi regime, right? And like the people just go along with what? Another neo-Nazi regime? Like, it seems like they're be disinterested in that. There must always be the victory on the screen, yeah. But this is only really doable in the East, where a large chunk of the population is very pro-Russian. So I would not be surprised if we see Ukraine broken up. I mean, certainly it's going to be broken up in terms of this area is going to be become independent. So it's going to lose this territory for sure, and officially will lose Crimea. So there is going to be a breaking up of that. But it's about like what is actually possible, right? Like, is it even going to be possible to get the Ukrainians to go along with this? Like, what could the Russians actually achieve here, and what can they actually manage to do? Like, to what and along what lines? To what degree can they break this place up? I'm not really seeing much come out of the Russian side of the conversation saying that they're that interested in doing that, but who knows, right? It could be a long process. Could take a while. Once the Russian military has established itself, right? What could the Ukrainians do except those terms, right? Like, if Russia wants to break Ukraine up, it might be able to just enforce that and just force them to do it. But we'll see. We'll see. I'm a bit, just mainly because like it seems to me like the Russians have been pretty upfront about what it is they want out of this, and breaking apart Ukraine. Like, let's say they wanted to, like, so this becomes independent, and then they take this section of Ukraine, and that becomes its own thing, and then this becomes its own thing, and that, like, at the beginning, I was talking that way because it would be actually very advantageous to Russia if this was all broken up and became something of a political quagmire, right? So that it was way more difficult for NATO to just, instead of having to coup one government and then seizing all this territory from the NATO perspective, they'd have like a series of different governments that they'd have to deal with and coup and all this kind of stuff. And several of them, Russia could... so I could see why it would be beneficial. It's whether or not it's possible. That's what it really comes down to. Like, Putin doesn't want this to turn into an endless war situation. He doesn't want to have to constantly be fighting a never-ending war. Right? Like, and is that what's going to happen if he tries to break Ukraine apart? Is it going to turn into like a never-ending war? Yeah, we'll see. I do think that he wouldn't be against the idea of like the Kharkiv region here becoming its own place too. Turn this into like an independent state as well. And then you have like a shield of independent states, right? You've got like the Donbass region, you've got an independent state over here, you've got Belarus as an independent state, so that there's always like a little bit of a split from the fucking psychos. Did YouTube update for anyone else? Everything is italicized for me. YouTube trying to update midstream. Yeah, who knows what's going on with YouTube ever, dude. Lukashenko already warned that the longer the Kiev regime refuses to accept the Russian demands, the harsher the imposed terms will be, because Ukraine will lose all leverage they still have. And that is also part of it. Like, right now, the Ukrainians actually do have some leverage, right? Like, they are fighting, and, like, they have, like, human lives are leverage in the conversation. But Lukashenko's quite right that, like, if it comes down to it, and, like, the fighting force is decimated and it's over, then Russia can just kind of impose what it wants. And I haven't seen anything. Like, nothing's coming out of the Kremlin to convince me that they're interested in breaking everything apart. But that could change the longer that this goes. Because you are right that, like, the longer this goes on, the more deeply entrenched you can get a Russian administration into these regions, right? That instead of it being like troops moving through, you have administrators who are actually doing things like taking over governmental power and taking over the distribution of goods and taking over all of this kind of stuff as militaries can. And so eventually the Russians, like the Kharkov example is the perfect one. Like, eventually the Russians could just be like, well, our military, like, we have established an administration here that is essentially a government anyway. So why shouldn't we just establish that and continue that forward, you know? Like, that's definitely something that could happen should the Ukrainians continue to draw this out. And yeah, again, it is one of these things where we'll see how it all unfolds. It's very, very difficult for me to see, like, unless the United States and NATO are willing to escalate, like, unless they're really willing to, like, get serious firepower and troops, for God's sakes. Because at this point, sending small arms in is a dead end. It goes nowhere, right? No one gets them. It doesn't matter because the supply chains are broken, right? They literally can't just drive a convoy into Kharkiv or into Mariupol or into Kiev. Like, they literally can't. It's physically not possible. And so they say, like, we're sending all these arms, but it's just a dead end. It goes nowhere. Like, what if the Ukrainians actually were to have a fighting chance at this? It would be in the form of a neighboring country pushing in with troops. Like that, like, this map would suddenly have like a blue section of it, and there would be a blue section moving across the map, right? Like that's what actually needs to happen right now. And I'm not seeing anything coming out of the Biden administration or NATO itself showing that it is interested in doing that. Quite the opposite. That they're saying that they're not interested in getting boots in the ground, and for a very clear stated reason. They don't want to escalate this into World War III, right? Makes total sense. But so if the Ukrainians actually were to have a shot at winning this thing, that's what would need to happen. And that's just not going to. If it was going to happen, it would have happened. And but again, I mean, it is worth saying that I think that the United States didn't expect Russia to invade. Oh, I know. Like, I think that the United States, like, I think when it, like, a month out, they were saying that Russia is going to invade, right? But on the lead up, I just think they never believed that Russia was actually going to do it. And that means that they didn't really have the troops in place to be able to counter it. So who knows? Maybe they'll lose their minds and just keep going. The no-fly zone also not possible yet. Well, Rob, thank you so much. You can cuss more in Super Chat if you spend more. Thanks, Rob. I appreciate that, bud. I appreciate that. Good opportunity to tell everybody to like, share, subscribe, send it around, let people know I exist. Give me money. Give me money. My Patreon's in the description. You could also give just like a couple of bucks in the Super Chat. Thanks, Rob. I appreciate it, bud. Every little bit helps. It also makes me feel good about myself. Yeah, the no-fly zone's not possible. The Pentagon rejected the idea flat out. They don't even want to discuss it because it's a non-starter. Well, and that goes back to the Syrian conflict, right? Like, that's not just... We have lots of conversations that happened in Syria in Congress. And, of course, a lot of these conversations are starting to spread around a little bit more because we have Congress people and senators asking the military, can we implement a no-fly zone in Syria? And the military looked at them and said straight out, the only way we would be able to enforce a no-fly zone is to go to war with Syria and thereby Russia. Like, and you could see these senators and these Congress people being like, oh, okay. Like, that's just not going to happen. So when the no-fly zone question gets brought up by Ukraine, it's the same. It's the same exact thing. Like, to enforce a no-fly zone, like these fucking baby brain liberal Marvel fans are just like, a no-fly zone, hit the button, and the laser barrier comes up, and then it's like no-fly zone, and if a plane tries to come through, it just gets stuck in midair, right? Like it's fucking Star Wars or something. It's like, no, bro. Like, the only way to enforce a no-fly zone is to shoot down planes that try to go into the no-fly zone. So what does that mean? It's a declaration of war. It's a straight-up declaration of war. And the but like the baby brains don't think that way. And likely because Russia already has AA guns in the controlled territories. Yeah, there's that too. Like, and like, the escalation question is the big deal, right? Like, it really is. And I'm more or less of the opinion that the United States got everything it wanted out of this. Even though everything it wanted was stupid, what it really wants is it wants to push Russia away from the EU. That's what it wants. It wants Russia to be pushed away from NATO and from the EU. Because Russia's getting a bit cozy with China. Russia's getting a bit cozy with the real enemy. Like, let's be real clear who the real enemy is in this, right? And by doing this, it can begin to enact sanctions on Moscow and Belarus to be able to cut off the Belt and Road Initiative into Europe. Now, I think this is stupid, right? I think this is dumb. It's a dumb way to operate, but it is the way that like a scared monkey with a nuke would act. And if the United States was smart, man, it would start to invest in its own manufacturing. It would start to begin rebuilding its manufacturing base with the idea that it needs to stop this sanction regime, stop trying to rule through military might exclusively. Telling the United States not to rule with military might is not going to be possible. But like, the idea that the United States genuinely thinks it's going to be able to move forward without some kind of manufacturing base, like without some kind of serious actual goods making capacity, I mean, yeah, this is what we're talking about when we say baby brain, right? Like, so the airspace above Ukraine is lost for the West, unless, as you say, they do a big ground offensive with tanks, hundreds of thousands of troops. Yeah, there is absolutely no appetite for anything remotely like that in either Europe or any NATO state. Yeah, for sure. Like, the European nations are certainly against that. Like, because what you are talking about is full-scale war, like with a nuclear power, no less. Like, who has a nuclear power that is explicitly, like, rattling the nukes, right? And you can think that that's saber rattling, but they thought that it was saber rattling when Putin was saying he was going to invade Ukraine, and then he did, right? So, like, are you willing to call this bluff? Are you willing to do that? I don't think so, man. Like, I don't think so. Like, and it just looks like there's no signs of it. Like, that's the reason why there's been all of this talk about, like, oh, the foreign fighters have gone into Ukraine. Like, because they need some kind of story, because they're not actually forming military and forming ranks or anything like that. So like, it's a shitty situation all around, but is it going to escalate into like a World War III sort of situation? No. And honestly, I look at this situation and it's completely backfiring for the United States. Like, it really is backfiring. That, like, Russia, China, India, the big power players, Saudi Arabia, Iran, like, all of these guys are going to start getting into a room together and be like, okay, like, we like, especially something like China and India, like, we have a history of tension with one another for sure, but we got to start putting that aside, and we got to start actually thinking about how do we create some kind of larger federated system, right? Which China has actively been moving forward with the Belt and Road Initiative, in order to counter this crazy nonsense psychopath, right? Like, the United States is a fucking psycho, and if you're not going to, if you're just going to let this psychopath just fund Nazis and blow the place up, it will. Like, it really will. Like, when China, when America invaded Iraq and Afghanistan, like, how do you think that made the Chinese feel? How do you think that made the Indians feel? Like, how do you think that made the Russians feel? You think they looked at this invasion of Iraq and Afghanistan, where the United States literally looked to NATO and the UN and said, you're either with us or against us? Like, George Bush literally said to the UN that it's an outdated, unnecessary institution. Like, that's scary shit. Like, that's scary Nazi level shit. And if you got to be thinking, like, if you're China, Russia, and you got this situation going on, like, look, China's like in this situation too, like, and you're surrounded like this by a force that's shown very clearly that they're willing to just blow places up if they want to, because they say so. Scary as shit. Like, that's scary, man. Like, and so it seems to me like the complaint that most Westerners have about the Russians and what they're doing here in Ukraine is essentially, how dare they fight back? Right? It really does come down to this statement that I've made over and over again about this. Like, how dare they fight back? Don't they know that they're supposed to do what the United States says? and it's completely backfiring. That the dollar hegemony is going to drop, right? You're going to have different forms of currencies come up and start being used in more serious ways. The Indian currency, which I forget its name, but the Russians are willing to trade for it right now, and basically the world is going to get off of the dollar hegemony and the dollar, this supremacy of the dollar, and that's a disaster for the United States, incidentally, because that's been its only advantage internationally, is that everybody wants to trade for dollars. And so you don't really need to have a strong manufacturing base. You don't really need to have any kind of strong domestic programs, because everybody's always willing to buy your dollars, right? Well, if people stop buying your dollars, and if people stop trading in your dollars, well, then what are they trading with you? And so all of a sudden, all of these Chinese goods that we've been getting on the cheap, right? Like, this is what's so hilarious. Like, people say, like, oh, America, go to war with China. I'm like, what are you talking about? If America went to war with China, it would collapse the United States economy immediately. Drew, bless your heart, bud. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Thanks, bud. Congrats on 1K. Absolutely. And man, I got to tell you, this channel getting monetized was not... personally, was like a real, like, breath of fresh air. It really released a lot of tension inside of me, for sure. But also, it eased my mind a little bit in regards to, like, are we going to go full-blown, like, like, no one's allowed to talk. No one's allowed to say anything. No one's allowed to dissent. We're not going to have any dissension. So it's gone. Dude, I have seen this. Transylvanian, I think. Do I still have that? Adam something, for God's sakes. Like, well, I don't have it right in front of my fingertips, I don't think. Adam something had a fucking moment like this where he was like, I think we can get rid of these, where he was saying that. I wonder if I kept it. No. Like, that's fucking scary. Yeah, some of them are calling first strikes and stuff. Yeah, absolutely. Right? And we're really starting to see how insane a lot of these sort of people who called themselves progressives, people who called themselves leftists, actually are. It's been a very revealing moment. I don't think I've got it in front of me, but like literally, yeah, they're saying outright, like, nuclear war wouldn't be so bad, right? You're just like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, nuclear war wouldn't be so bad? Shut the fuck up. Like, it's deranged. It's deranged, right? Like, it's the very definition of this Marvel brain rot that I'm talking about, and I've been talking about all along. That, like, oh, like, sure, there'll be nukes, but then, we'll recover and rebuild and blah, blah, blah. And, like, it's exactly the way that someone who's never really lived in reality, like, you have rich parents, and those rich parents were willing to support you while you started to do your YouTube channel thing or whatever. And you got big because it was the early day of YouTube and no one was really doing it. And so you were able to get along, and you made like cool videos and all this kind of stuff. But you've never really worked a day in your life. You don't really understand the concept of what a working class even is. That's a great way of saying it too. Yeah, pure main character syndrome, right? That we, like, I'm the main character and you are all NPCs, right? Instead of this being like a massive multiplayer game where we are all players, right? I'm the main character in my own narrative. Yeah, and they'll be part of the survivors. Of course they will be. Because all of this exists for my benefit, right? Like, why else would it exist? Which is why, like, this what you're talking about here, this main character syndrome, all the billionaires have this, right? Which is why they're perfectly fine with destroying this place on their way out. Because they are like, well, I'm the main character, and this system is designed so that I die, and that's not really acceptable. So it's if this place dies too, as I die, well, then it doesn't matter because this place only exists for my benefit because I'm the main character, right? That's the way these guys actually think. That's why nothing's actually being done about climate change, incidentally. That's why nothing's actually being done about any of this. Because these guys don't think, like, what's going to be left when I'm gone? Like, what's my legacy actually going to be? Because they don't actually care about that. Because the only legacy they care about is what they themselves can experience. And if that's all you care about, then who cares if this place is a burnt out shell when you're gone, right? Because as far as you're concerned, if you can't experience it, it doesn't exist. Like, that's really what it is. Sounds like American exceptionalism. Yeah, that's definitely part of it. Do they have bunkers for the elite? But what would they be left with? Dude, I've said this over and over again, right? I've seen this, how they've built bunkers and all this kind of stuff. I can't imagine a more perfect hell for these guys. Go into your fucking bunker, right? Absolutely. Go into your goddamn bunker after the world has become a unlivable hellscape, right? Who are you going to bring down there, right? You going to bring down servants? Well, how long do you think until those servants just kill that guy and then build a society without this raging narcissistic psychopath, right? Pretty fast, I think. It would happen pretty quickly. Or if you go down there by yourself, right? How long until you go mad, right? Pretty quick, I think. So, like, I can't think of a better punishment for these psychopaths than get jammed into a bunker. Yeah, billionaires are the epitome of put out of sight, out of mind. They have fallout shelters nicer than your home, yeah. And, like, the amount of money they spend on those fallout shelters, you're just like, you could have spent that money on, like, alleviating this crisis, right? You could have spent that money on literally anything else. But it's just like baby brain. It's this baby brain Marvel shit, right? Like, we'll we'll live in a fallout shelter and then we'll rebuild humanity. It's like, that's literally not what's going to happen. Like, and you don't even need to go too deep. You don't need to like do like big, heavy analytics to realize what'll happen to a person that gets stuck in a bunker this way. Like, read like a single Stephen King novel. Like, Stephen King nails it when it comes to like what happens to people who get trapped into bunkers. Like, you don't just live a nice life, right? You go mad. Like, you become an animal. Bloodthirsty liberals on the internet like Adam and Vosh are not part of the bunker elite, though. Yeah, I know, right? Well, these guys are as baby brained as it can be, right? Like they don't have a perception outside of their, like, you know, babyfied, their molly-coddled life in the first place. And I don't know why we care about the opinions of a pedophile like Vosh in the first place. Yeah, Adam Something always presented himself as a progressive, right? But over this period of time, it's become really obvious that, like, nah, he was always a liberal. That's why they killed Saddam and Gaddafi, because they wanted to stop using the petrodollar. Yeah, you're absolutely on the money with that, pissed off. That, I mean, Gaddafi is, I think, a little bit more complex than that. But Saddam, I think that really was the pulling of the trigger, right? They are just delusional. We'll be the first to be sacrificed to the billionaires they simp for. Yeah, for sure. What are some good Discords to join, apart from yours, of course, the best one? Well, thank you, Vince. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't have the time to spend on, like, Discord stuff. I'm doing my own shit. Gaddafi was based, but Saddam was... Yeah, he was a brutal U.S.-installed dictator. They still turned on him. Yeah. Well, and that's part of the thing with Saddam, right? Like, he was installed by the United States, and they destroyed him anyway, right? And they destroyed him because he broke the cardinal rule of trying to help his own citizens, right? You can't help your own citizens. Any Manitoba drama tells what happened with Heather and her comments? Did she say something bad? I don't know. That I don't really pay that much attention to what's going on in Manitoban politics because the end result is it's already written on the stars. Like the PCs are out, the NDP are in. The polling data is so heavily towards the NDP at this point that there's no way the Conservatives will pull up. The only way that it would start to change is if Wab Kinew did something like he'd literally have to kill someone, I think. Like, straight up. Like, he'd have to, like, take a knife and stab someone to death on television or something for it to change. And it's so, like, any drama that comes out of the situation, it's just daytime TV shit. I don't really care about. Have you heard of a show called Severance? It's on Apple TV. It's amazing. Gives off Parasite vibes meets corporate culture. It's amazing. Oh, there you go. High praise. Yeah, and we're going to start seeing a lot more of that kind of shit, too. Like, this is what Marx is talking about when he says that... was it Marx that said this? Am I misattributing? Anyway, that capitalists are their own gravediggers. Like, they sell you the rope to hang themselves. Because, like, anti-capitalism becomes... popular culture eventually, where we're all just like, no, I'm not going to go watch something that's pro-capitalist. I'm not spending my time. I'm not wasting my time being jerked around by this kind of stuff. And so now we're seeing stories come out and things like Parasite, things like Squid Game that are explicitly anti-capitalist become very popular and become part of the popular culture, right? So the capitalists see that and think, well, you know how I could make some money, right? And because they're psychos, you know, at the end of the day, they can be convinced with just like, hey, you want some more money? Here's a good way to make some money. Yeah, it's a story about how you suck. What do you care? Yeah, no, of course, they will soon market They did that with the green, right? The green economy, right? They did that with environmentalism. Right? For God's sakes, like, remember the 90s revolution? There was a whole, like, revolution in the 90s that they packaged and sold to us, right? The whole Smashing Pumpkins angst, like, Rage Against the Machine shit, that just got packaged and sold to us. Like, that's how it goes. They co-opt And any kind of anti-counterculture stuff, they just co-opt it and repackage it and sell it to you. Like, that's how it works. Look up Pinko the Bear on Twitch. He's a Marxist-Leninist streamer. He's a pretty awesome Discord server. Pinko the Bear. That's hilarious. Speaking of what would happen to elites stuck in a bunker post-nuclear war, just look how people lost their minds over being stuck inside for a few weeks during the last 2 years. Yeah, there you go. Right? And that wasn't even as bad as being stuck in a bunker. Right? You were still allowed to, like, go outside. You were still allowed to, like, walk around and see the sun and touch grass and like, you know, go to the water side and all that kind of shit. Being stuck in a bunker, you might as well be in hell. Like, you might as well be in hell. Like, you're going to watch the same movies over and over again? Like, what are you going to do? Like, you're going to start painting, I guess? Until you run out of paint? It's fucking ridiculous. And in the meantime, Toronto may begin to close temporary shelters that make up 40% of its capacity. Just in case you were thinking we were anything but a barbaric culture, the city of Toronto could begin to decommission temporary shelter spaces that were set up to help people experiencing homelessness during the COVID-19 pandemic. What these shelters really were for is for jamming people into as the police beat them up. What would Ford do without his eggs? Exactly. Like, what would Ford do if he couldn't drive down to Timmy's, right? Imagine someone like Doug Ford. Like, what do you mean? I'm stuck in a bunker? I can't get my Timmy's? What's he going to do? What's he going to do? It's estimated 40% of Toronto's current shelter space comes from its temporary sites. Like, so it's madness. Like, it's madness. Like, we are going to be experiencing a spike in homelessness while we are closing shelters. And then in the meantime, what's that going to result in? It's going to result in more homelessness. You're going to get tents in parks and all that kind of stuff. And the absurdity, the absolute asinine absurdity of like, we spend to clear the parks here in Toronto, it cost us $20,000 per head. So for every homeless person that we cleared out of a park here in Toronto with the police forces, it cost us $20,000. Do you think we could have just given those people $20,000 each? Right? Like, what do you think that would have done? And while all homes are being bought up by mega real estate conglomerates, yeah, even the CBC is beginning to report on that. Finally. Right? It's only been a year or 2 or 3, right? Like, it's becoming so obviously a problem that housing is being bought up by the investor class, right? Because they don't have anything else to buy, right? They've got all this capital, they've got all this money, right? And they can't really buy anything anymore because they've got so much. And so what are they doing? They're just buying up empty houses, right? And I don't think that they actually genuinely care about turning this into like rental spaces or anything like this. I think that they just want the land. Oh yeah, I have no idea how Americans are putting up with this. The homelessness crisis is going to spike up to ludicrous levels. I mean, I think that a big win by the death cult has been denigrating the homeless and the poor, right? They'll get a job, right? Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. The idea is that because we worship free market principles, let chaos reign and all that shit, because we worship money, it means that if you have money, you're morally good, and the things that you're doing to get that money are, by definition, morally good, right? And so, intrinsically, what that means is if you don't have money, then you're morally bad. And what you're doing is resulting in you not having money, and so you are morally bad. And because we have this, like, real intrinsically religious view of money, an intrinsically religious view of our system, instead of entrenching it in reality or in some kind of analysis, it means that if you are poor, you deserve it, right? And this is why North American people, when they walk by homeless people or when they step over homeless people, right? These people are invisible. Like they don't matter. They can be excluded from your worldview. And when you are making films or television or any of this kind of stuff, this section of the society is rendered completely invisible because they're an externality. The bad people aren't the people with the wealth and the power. The bad people are the people who can't get any wealth and power. And so as homelessness increases and spikes, it's going to be like a bubble, and you're going to have that viewpoint challenged more seriously, where the people who are saying this is an individual issue and these individuals just need to individualize their individualism to achieve their individualism, it's not going to be able to withstand it anymore, because already 60% of Canadians, 60% of people who are responding to polls are saying that they're having trouble paying their bills. Well, is that an individual problem? Is that just them not being able to individualize their individualism? Or is that actually like a systemic problem? And eventually it will become too overwrought. And the only people who will maintain this idea of get a job and just, you don't have any money, so you're wrong. Eventually the only people who will maintain that will be the most detached and the most cruel amongst us. And of course, that means that it'll be the most powerful, right? And that's usually how it goes. I resent my landlord, as any renter does, but at least he just owns this one house, lives on a floor below me, so I can talk to him if I'm having issues. But a big corporate faceless landlord? Yeah, nightmare. Absolutely. Yeah, they don't care. They don't care at all. I just saw an ad today showing the skyrocketing housing prices in Toronto and how people's wages barely made up for it. Yeah. They trying to tell you how to Sigma grind set your way around it. Yeah. Rockstar Inner Circle is the investor group the ad is from, of course. No, of course. And remember, investor groups, it really pays to remember this. Investor group is literally just rich people with money who do no work. That's what an investor group actually is. It's just a group of rich people who do no work, who don't actually do anything at all. That if there is any work to be done to maintain anything, they just hire people to do it, right? You can hire an accountant for $100,000 a year, right? It doesn't take a brilliant genius to figure this out. CEOs are paid so well because they're expected to run the whole company, and part of CEOs don't do any work either, right? If a CEO was told to do any work, they just hire somebody to do it, and they just do it. And then the person who does the work comes to them and says, "Here's the work that I've done," and they go, "Good job." And that's the extent of the work that they do. And they basically just piss around, show up at the office when they're supposed to show up. People tell them the work that they've done, and they all go, "Excellent. Line went up, I'm happy." And that's called being a CEO, right? CEOs don't fucking work. It's a huge joke. This idea that we're supposed to worship CEOs, and you see people on YouTube, these fucking idiots like Destiny, for example, being like, "Do you really think that you could do the same job as a CEO?" I'm like, anybody could do the job a CEO does. Literally anybody. It isn't hard to pay people to do work and then have them tell you what work they did. And then look at a fucking spreadsheet and be like, "Well, number went up, I'm happy." Right? That's the job of a CEO. It's not a job. It's literally just the definition of a worthless middleman who is been put into this position because they've always said, "Yes, sir." That's it. And the true job of a CEO is that when the investors come and say, "We want line go up," they go, "Yes, sir." And then they turn to their own people who they've all hired and they say, "We need line go up." And these people are all yes men too, right? And so they're all just like, "Well, yes, sir." And then they'll come and be like, "Okay, we found a way to make line go up. Means we need to lay off 10% of the workforce." And then the CEO goes, "Line go up, good." And then they do it. That's it. That's the whole fucking job. Anybody can do that job. Anybody can do that fucking job. And anybody who thinks that CEOs work hard and are intrinsic and are somehow special or anything have fucking Marvel baby brain rot. It's ridiculous. It's such a stupid worldview. Super dumb. Super dumb. Summer is coming, tents will pop up everywhere. I suspect that's the case, pissed off. I suspect so. We're gonna see a big upswell for sure. Just stop buying coffee and eat bugs, bro. Yeah, bootstrap your way to the welfare office. Yeah. The Musk simps, but oh man, the Musk simps are the worst, man. Like, you got to be kidding me if you think that. Like, I have said this over and over about Elon Musk, and I will continue saying it. Elon Musk is a stupid person with daddy issues. That's what he is. He is unintelligent. I don't mean that he's just like an average intelligent dude. I literally think that Elon Musk is sub-intelligent. I think he's below average intelligence. Every time you listen to this guy talk, every time you listen to this guy in an interview, right? He sounds like he's trying to be smart, right? Like he sounds like in the interview he's actively attempting to sound intelligent, and he fails. He sounds like an idiot. Right? Go listen to his interview with Joe Rogan. He sounds so fucking stupid. Like, he just sounds so fucking dumb. And his view on, like, we're gonna get to Mars and all this kind of stuff, you listen to him and you're just like, he really does sound like a little boy who's just like, and I really think his worldview is basically like, so his dad was a slave owner, right? Owned an apartheid emerald mine, right? Where he kept slaves and threw them into these mines. And that's how he made his wealth. So probably not somebody who gave his son a lot of hugs and shit, right? And so I think Elon Musk's entire trajectory as an individual, as a person, is trying to prove to his daddy that he's worthy of his love and that my daddy would be proud of me. And he views this like journey to Mars as like, Daddy can't possibly be has to say that he's proud of me if I made it to Mars. I'd be so worthy of Daddy's love then, right? And everything he does fails, right? He made that like fucking Hyperloop shit, total failure, right? He keeps reinventing dumb shit, and this fucking ridiculous idea that Elon Musk is somehow a super genius inventor. He's never invented anything. He literally does exactly the thing I just said. Where he takes money, he looks at people and says, this is what I want, and they say, yes, sir, right? And then they do it, even if it's stupid, right? And it's the people who are simping for Elon Musk are the most gullible people on the planet. Like, Musk gets his face, he's like in a Marvel movie, he like gets his face on the next Edison and all this. It's like, yeah, he is the next Edison in that he stole everybody else's ideas and pretends to be an inventor when really he's just a fucking shyster. Like, yeah, Tesla survives on government handouts. Yeah, it's not hard to take government money. Like, it's not difficult. Oh, your business teacher is a Musk simp. Ugh. Going on about the tunnels being a genius invention to help humanity. Imagine this. Like we've done tunnels. Like, this is the thing that's so fucked up about this. Like not only are those tunnels, like, not new, like, subways exist, bro. Like, it's not a new technology. It doesn't take a genius to figure out, oh, let's do the thing we've done before, right? But then he made them worse. Because instead of putting, like, high-speed rail in there, that would actually be like, he's having people drive their own stupid cars in there. It's the dumbest fucking thing that a person can do. It's so stupid. And the people who simp for this are dumb. Like, they're dumb. Like, stop believing these people. Like, they're unbelievably stupid. And these are the people who are running the place. So hard to imagine why we're going into a massive decline, right? Hard to imagine why we're going into this enormous decline. Ugh. And like the Tesla car, like the thing that they're really banking on to be like, this is going to let us compete with the Chinese and we're going to be able to transition from fossil fuels. Well, the Tesla cars keep blowing up. Like, they can't pass basic safety. Like, this pipe dream that's going on is just so... And, like, we're not actually building the infrastructure to be able to maintain them in the first place. Because capitalists get in the way all the time, which is what capitalists do. They just get in the way. And no more, like, this is no more obvious and writ large than the Belt and Road Initiative. Like, literally, China, since 2008, has been building high-speed rail, not only in China, but up into Russia, over into the Middle East, with plans to get it into Africa, right? The whole idea being that we're going to connect all of this with high-speed rail. Some of this rail goes as fast as 600 kilometers an hour. How much of that do we have going on over here? Exactly this much. Exactly zero, right? And it's going to stay that way. Why? Because, let's say, Justin Trudeau announced that he wants high-speed rail from Toronto to Montreal, right? Woo woo, right? Sounds good. Well, what do you think the fucking capitalists do, right? They take a look, they find out what, okay, so let's say the plan was to put rail right along here, right? Right along the 401, right? So what are they going to do? They're going to buy that land, right? And then they're going to turn around and say to the government, oh, that land is 100 times its value, right? And unless you actually buy that land from us, then and what's the government suddenly going to say? Oh, we don't have enough money. Right? We don't have enough money to be able to do the thing, so, well, you need to do a public-private partnership, right? Which, incidentally, fail all the time. And so the rail doesn't get built. Why? Because capitalists got in the way of the whole thing. Because it can't be metered by the capitalists. Like, and it's going to get fucking obvious. It's going to get fucking obvious as we fall behind technologically, as we fall behind in our infrastructure. Because not only is China building this infrastructure along with Russia, along with India, along with these Middle East, I shouldn't say India quite yet, but along with these Middle Eastern countries, along with Africa, right? As they build their infrastructure and as they scale up and as they get all this going on, not only are we not building that, we're not even maintaining our own current infrastructure, right? You take a look at like the Texas power grid, right? It keeps failing over and over and over again. And you take a look at why? It's because the whole thing's privatized, right? It's a bunch of like private owners that operate in like a council system. And they're completely disincentivized to actually maintain this, right? It's just a bunch of fucking assholes. And so they're not going to like improve it or make it better because that costs money. Fuck it. Yeah, into Vietnam too. They just put the first rail in Laos in operation recently, cutting travel times by literal days, where we previously only have dirt roads through the mountains. I think that it is actually an inevitability that Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, perhaps Thailand, like, I think that these countries begin to view China the way that Belarus views Russia. That Belarus isn't technically part of Russia, but the relationship is very close. The relationship is very, very close. And I really do think that, like, I've seen lots of reports and lots of stuff saying that, like, Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos, and Thailand, Myanmar, they have a kind of, they want to be a bit arm's length with China. And that makes sense. It does make sense. Like, China's upswell has been very rapid, and they are very scary. Like, just as a creature, just as an entity that exists. There's this enormous creature that has just swelled up in power and strength that keeps saying, like, we want to be self-sufficient, we want to be powerful, right? We want to be the great China. Like, they call their military the Great Wall of Steel, right? Like, they're very imposing, right? And so the question is, how is China going to actually interact with places like Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos? And so it makes a lot of sense that they would just be like, okay, that is very, very intimidating and scary. But everything I'm seeing coming out of China is that they're looking at these smaller countries and they're just like, you want to trade? We'll put a rail in here. You want to trade? Like, you want to hook up? You want to trade? You want to be part of this? Let's go. Let's go, Brandon. Let's roll, right? And I think eventually Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos, and Thailand, and Myanmar, right? And then like Bhutan, Bangladesh, Nepal, they stop, it kind of gets a little eased, right? Eventually they go from being like, oh, to kind of being like, oh, okay. Like, okay, yeah, great. And like, it doesn't look like China is going to try to enforce it doesn't look like China is going to try to like take over Vietnam, right? It's not going to spread its borders in and say, you Vietnam are now part of China. Because it doesn't really need to do that, right? That like its goal is just to try to get everybody under an umbrella, right? And fundamentally trade is peace. right? If you're trading with a people, you're not blowing them up, right? So trade is peace. The big moment in China and in this region generally is going to be when China finally takes Taiwan. That's going to be the big moment. That and we're going to see a lot of crazy shit go down. They built the highest altitude high-speed rail in the world in Tibet. Cambodia and Laos maybe. Vietnam are fiercely independent, historically wary of China since they had many conflicts throughout history. Recently a short war after the Americans left Vietnam. Yep, you're right about all that. Also, Thailand is its own thing. They have a very well-established monarchy, also value their independence greatly. They were one of the only two countries. No, that's why I think they're never gonna... I don't think China is ever gonna try to, like, push in and take over the region and make it part of China. Right? Like, I think the Communist Party has to see that that's a losing game, right? Like, why even do it is the big question. Like, what are you gaining from doing that? Far better to just convince these nations that you are a stable trading partner, that you are a worthwhile entity, that you are, yes, you're a big fucking giant. Yes, you're a big fucking nightmare. But, like, you don't need to go in there with a fucking club, right? Like, why wouldn't Vietnam, Laos, Thailand, and Cambodia want to trade with you, right? It's win-win, right? It's beneficial for both sides, right? Why spend the resources? Why spend the time, right? And China knows, like, the big moment that's coming up, and I want to spend kind of the last 10 minutes talking about, because it's always worth talking about when it comes to China, is they're going to move into Taiwan eventually. Like, that's going to happen. And just how this moment in Ukraine has been a big shifting of the perception. Like, people are really saying that this invasion into Ukraine by Russia has changed the world from a unipolar world to a multipolar world, right? And that the perception of what's going on in the world has shifted because of this conflict, right? And I think you're going to have another one here with Taiwan. No, they will not give up Taiwan. Taiwan is too culturally important for them. And as far as the Chinese are concerned, Taiwan is a part of China. Has always been a part of China. And the only reason this hasn't been resolved, as far as the Chinese are concerned, they're still at war with Taiwan, right? Like, the only reason it hasn't been resolved is because of American interference. That Mao would have taken it. For sure, Mao would have taken it, right? The Taiwanese have never declared their independence, right? That the war has been ongoing constantly. So when the Chinese move in, they're only going to move into Taiwan when they're sure it's a decisive victory, right? It's exactly how the Chinese operate. They're just going to move into, like, when it comes time, they're going to move their navy around Taiwan, right? A boat is going to go to Taipei, right? And the leadership's going to land in Taipei, and they're going to be like, here we are in China. And the leadership of Taiwan will likely go, yes, welcome to China. And they'll have a speech at the palace, right? And that'll kind of be the end of it. And of course, it'll be a huge international scandal. The Americans will make sure that there's, like, a huge international scandal about it. But they're not actually going to fight the Chinese over it. And that's going to be another big shifting point in the view of Westerners and the rest of the world. Like, it'll be like another multipolar shift, right? Where China asserts itself in the world in the face of America, who wants the opposite to occur. And I don't think it can go any other way. Like, unless the Americans want to go to full-scale war about it, which they're showing with this Ukrainian crisis, that they're not willing to do that with a nuclear power. So China resolving this long-standing conflict with Taiwan, I think, also has extraordinary cultural significance for China. That it really is going to be like a culmination. That the leader who is in power when they take Taiwan is going to evoke Mao and Deng and all of these former leaders and be like, this is like an era. This is an enormous moment in the cultural history of China. And the question is, if they can do it as slickly as I'm talking about, is that going to scare Vietnam? Is it going to scare Cambodia or Laos or Thailand? Like, are these guys going to get shaken by this? Is it going to shake South and North Korea, Japan, like all of these guys, India, right? Because this is going to be a moment where China is going to flex its military might. It's going to show the rest of the world, this is what we can do. Like, if they can roll in on Taiwan and just roll in there and take it over, well, what about the Philippines? Right? What about Vietnam? You know, it is going to be a scary moment for everybody. And how the Chinese go about it is going to matter a lot. I'm more or less of the opinion, and of course my opinion matters very little in this. The opinion of the Chinese matter way more than me. But from what I've seen of the Chinese and how they operate, they are only going to go into Taiwan when it's completely decisive. If it has to be like a long entrenched battle, if it has to be a big war, if there's going to be huge shot fires, bombing from planes, all that kind of stuff, they're just not going to do it. It really isn't going to be until they're convinced that they can surround the place with ships, get ambassadors in there pretty peacefully, and just have Taiwan be like, yep, we're good, right? We're good. It's over, right? Like that's how it's going to go with this, because it seems like that's how the Chinese roll generally. And because why would they want a big protracted war? Why would they want a big thing, right? The problem with some of these Southeast Asians have massive Stockholm Syndrome for Westerners that happily submit to white supremacy to stand against China. I worry about that too, which I think is odd for this region. Like, the Americans blew the fucking shit out of this place. Like, Laos it's still covered in like mines and bombs and shit. And you're just like, what? Like, how do these guys have kind of like Westerner brain? Like, Japan was literally nuked. You know, like I'm like, okay, like I guess it's submission. I can't really speak to it. It would be so nice to be able to get from coast to coast within hours. Yeah, no kidding, eh? Like, imagine if our subway systems had this fucking high-speed rail in it. It'd be crazy. Yeah, they literally inject chemicals into their skin, their blood to whiten their skin. Yeah, wild. China had the same problem a few decades ago, but as they have risen up and established themselves as a world power, they've regained their pride and sense of stealth. Southeast Asia will too. Yeah, it could go that way. And I don't know, it makes a certain degree of sense that, like, it seems a very human thing to do, to want to appeal to the dominant power, right? In terms of, and there are many weird and strange ways that we do that. But now the United States isn't really the dominant power any longer, right? It's certainly a power and a dominant power, sure. But I do think it's more likely that as China continues to rise, as it begins to assert itself, unless it goes nuts, and let's be real clear about something, it could go nuts. Like, it could. Like, let's not pretend like it can't. Doesn't look like it's gonna. Looks like it's stable. Looks like it's trying not to go nuts, right? So far, so good. And one hopes that as that continues, that people in the region will begin to kind of come to that conclusion and come to that position. And of course, it's definitely, like, that's easy for me to say because I'm over here in Canada. And if you're living in like Laos, like if you're living like in or in Hanoi is a great example, right? Like, China's right fucking there, like, boom, right there, and Hong Kong is right there. And the conflict that's going on in Hong Kong is not, China is not blameless in this, right? Like, this is, you can have a big, long conversation, a big, long debate about what's going on in Hong Kong. It's got to make the people of Hanoi pretty skittish, right? It's got to make them a little like, okay, that's a bit, okay, right? There's got to be a bit of that going on for sure. And their perspective of China is going to be way more skeptical and way more, and especially as you say, Transylvania, they've recently had conflict with China, like not that long ago. So there's a lot of color there, and there's a lot of different kind of perspectives. It's not as simple as well, there they are, and we should trade with them, and everything's good. Oh, you got it, bud. You got it. That's a good idea. Let's finish reading these up. The real problem are South Korea and Japan, much more culturally colonized by the West. The domination is almost total. Yes, that is definitely true. Well, Japan for fucking good reason. Like, they got nuked, completely demilitarized, right? Like, the westernization of Japan. Like, their culture was essentially cleansed. And so when you have a cleansed culture and an occupying force that just nuked you, you're going to defer culturally more to your occupiers, right? I heard they blamed China for the Atlanta spa shooting more than the shooter. Jesus. All right, by request from Pissed Off, and this is a great song to close with. I want this to be up here. These times they are uncertain, of that there is no doubt, and nobody can tell me quite what it's all about. The heartbreak and the loneliness, the chaos and the fear will make even the strongest cry, I wish my ma was here. A young man on a battlefield fights for a rich man's gold. The bullet cracks into his spine, he knows he won't grow old. And as the tears come streaming down at once, his mind goes clear. The war was fought for nothing, he cries, I wish my ma was here. A lively story well in hand, a joke to soothe your soul. And when it came to arguing, she'd forgive and let it go. And when I cried, she held me, told me it's okay, my dear. And as we face these darkened days, I wish my ma was here. And as we march into the streets, as all the righteous do, we'll raise our voices to the skies, they cannot stop the truth. And as we tear their structures down, we'll raise a victory cheer. We made the world a better place, and I wish my ma was here. Yeah, we made the world a better place, and I wish my ma was here. Well, guys, with that, always remember, you are a quantum being walking around in quantum energy. These billionaires are spending hundreds of billions of dollars in the hope that you won't realize it, and you'll just stay the good little commodity that they need you to be. Revolt, rebel, repent. Good luck. We're going to need it.